Welcome, everyone, to the June 24th, 2024 Auburn City Council meeting. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Dowden Calvillo.
Present.
Amara.
Present.
Holmes.
Here.
Sierra Sammons.
Present.
And Mayor Riddell Harris.
Here, thank you. Let's see, Councilwoman Sierra Sammons, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Ready and pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. We don't have anything on the mayor's commendations, proclamations, and acknowledgements, so we'll go straight to the adoption of the agenda. This is the time set aside for the council members and or the public to ask for removal, postponement, or change of any listed sequence of agenda items. The agenda will be approved by consensus of the council. Are there any items that any of the council would like to move?
Yes,
Councilwoman Sierra
Mayor,
Samantha?
I've heard that there's some interest in the public coming to the TOT measure number 15. So I would like to move that ahead of number 12.
Okay, are there any objections to moving that item up
No.
to the first item in council business?
And I have item 5 on the consent calendar and also,
Well, we're not quite to the consent calendar, it's just moving around the agenda.
oh, okay, all right.
Madam Mayor, I believe we have a removal of one of the items from the agenda, Mr.
Yeah,
City Manager.
Madam Mayor, we need to remove number 11 from consent for consideration at a later date. There's an issue with the resolution.
Okay, great, thank you. Are there any other items that the public or the council would like to move or change in the agenda? Okay, then, without objection, we will adopt the agenda as amended. Seeing no objection, the agenda is adopted. Moving forward with the consent agenda, all matters listed in the consent calendar are considered to be routine in nature and will be approved by one blanket motion with a roll call vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless persons request specific items to be removed from the consent calendar for discussion and separate action. Any items removed will be considered after the motion to approve the consent calendar. Are there any requests from council to remove any items from the consent calendar?
Yes,
Councilman Holmes?
yes, I'd like to have the minutes from, I guess it's on item 1, the minutes from the 13th of May,
Okay,
and also item 5.
I was going to remove 5 as well. Is there any other items? Councilwoman Sierra Sammons.
I'd like to pull item number 4.
Item number 4. Okay, are there any items that the council would like to pull? Okay, any members of the public that would like to remove any other items from the consent calendar? Okay, seeing none, is there any public comment on the remaining items on the consent calendar? Moving forward, I would like to move that we approve the consent calendar with removing items 1, 4, and 5. And thank you. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Dowden Calvillo.
Aye.
Amara. Holmes.
Aye,
Sierra Sammons.
Aye.
Mayor Riddell Harris.
Aye. Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 1, Councilman Holmes.
yes, let me find on the minutes from May 13, page 3, it says that under item 8B, Canyon Creek subdivision, Councilmember Amara recused herself from the item and left the council chambers. And then it says that by resolution, I made the motion to move forward and seconded by Councilmember Amara.
Tomorrow. Okay, so she wasn't in the room, so she couldn't have seconded it.
Yes.
So, do you want to bring back the minutes after maybe you could review the
Absolutely.
videotape and?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I'll find out who seconded it and bring them back.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Do we need to have both of those in order to, can we approve the one that isn't?
Yes, we can.
Okay, So then we're gonna amend it to just approve,
April 22nd.
the council minutes for 4/22 of
Mm.
2024, and then the item from 5/13 will come back.
Mhm.
Does that work for you, Councilman Holmes?
Wait a minute, what?
Yeah.
So you have, there's an issue that needs to be fixed on the 5/13,
Yeah,
but we also had the one for April 22nd, so we were just gonna approve the item for April 22nd, and the clerk is gonna bring back the item.
that's okay, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, so can I have a motion for item number
Any
one?
public comment, Madam
Oh, yeah.
Mayor?
Is there any public comments on this item? Seeing none?
I'll move the approved, the minutes for.
I'll second.
Okay, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Dowden Calvillo.
Aye.
Amara,
Yes.
Holmes,
Aye,
Sarah Sammons.
Aye.
And Mayor Riddell Harris.
Aye, thank you. Motion carries. Moving on to item number 4. I think this was Councilwoman Sarah Salmon?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I've been noticing that when we get these staff reports for the warrants paid, there's a note like on the first page at the bottom where it says the monthly warrants are included as attachments, and they're not. They're not part of the public agenda. So I would like to request that for future meetings that the warrants that we're going to approve become part of the actual packet. I know we as council members get them. They are available to the public, but I just think in this, for just accessibility purposes.
We can accommodate that.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay.
That was it.
Thank you. All right. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back.
I move by resolution, we adopt a resolution of approving accounts payable warrants paid from April 24 to May 24.
I'll second.
Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Dowden Calvillo.
Aye.
Amara,
Yes.
Holmes,
aye,
Sarah Sammons.
Aye.
Mayor Riddell Harris.
Aye, motion carries. Moving on to item number 5, Councilman Holmes?
yes, in the Road Repair and Accountability Act issue, I just have a question about, it lists Maidu Drive as a number of repairs to be done there. And I'm not sure what current PCI means.
Oh, good evening, Madam Mayor, council members, Manjel Dean, Public Works Director. PCI stands for Pavement Condition Index. So the current pavement condition index.
Can you explain the numbers?
So the pavement condition index is graded from a scale of 0 to 100. Your best possible road would be at 100. Your worst possible road that would need total rehabilitation would be at 0.
Yeah. Well, there's one that's a number 1 here.
So it's almost as bad as you can get.
Yeah.
It's just as bad as you could possibly get.
Yeah, okay. Well, that was my question, so.
I also wanted to
Thank you.
pull the item. So if you're done with your comments. I wanted to say thank you for, looking at Maidu Drive. I know it wasn't necessarily in that condition originally, but it's really deteriorated over the last couple years since we've done the condition evaluation. And I know a lot of people use it, including myself, but also the school, everyone going to Sky Ridge, and then also PCWA uses it as well. I didn't know if we've talked with PCWA because they have a lot of large vehicles that use that to make sure that we're coordinating with them and talking with them about the pavement condition.
So in general, whenever we do anything on any major roadway, especially an arterial road that's heavily traveled like this one, like you mentioned, we always inform all of the utilities. So PCWA will be made aware when we're ready to do this work along with PG&E and the other utilities, even though they might not have anything there, just in case they're coordinating some other effort that they might need to utilize the road for, we would make them aware of it.
Is there any additional impact that happens to the road because they have so many large vehicles that travel on that road?
Yeah, absolutely. So a roadway that sees bigger trucks and things like that actually deteriorates faster, but we accommodate for that and can and program the type of maintenance that we're going to do based on that. So,
Bless you.
My last comment is, we've had some challenges in the past about coordinating around the first day of school or the last day of school. And since this is the route to get to Sky Ridge, are we making, it said we're gonna do it sometime in this last 6 months of the year. Are we gonna work to make sure I know it's gonna be a pain no matter what, because that's the main route to school. It's gonna be during the school year. But Can we make sure that we coordinate with the school and try to make it as least painful as possible and communicate about it a lot?
Yeah, absolutely. So the intent is once we go out to bid for this, we'll make sure that the contractors are aware of how this road is used. We give our input as much as possible. I'll say that, and we
We're
could
at the-
try to court, yes.
Just wanted to highlight that since we've gotten lots of public comments on that in the past.
We will do our very best.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Okay, I'm open. Is there a motion on item number?
Yes,
Oh,
I-
wait, public comment. Sorry. Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, then I'll open it for a motion.
I'd
Madam
like-
Mayor, I'll move by resolution to incorporate the fiscal year 24-25 gas tax budget, a list of projects to be funded by SB1 as proposed.
Madam Clerk, can you call the roll?
Councilmember Dowden Calvillo.
Aye.
Amara,
Yes.
Holmes,
Aye.
Sarah Sammons.
Aye.
Mayor Riddell Harris.
Aye. Motion carries, and that is the consent calendar. Moving on to public comment. This is a time provided so that the public may speak to the council on any item that's not on the agenda. Please make your comments as brief as possible, not to exceed 3 minutes. The council cannot act on the items not included on the agenda. Items will may be referred to staff or placed on a future agenda. Is there any public comment?
Yes.
Councilman Holmes, did you have some public comment?
Well, yes, I do. And I've commented about this before. I notice drivers in Auburn often do not signal when they are going to make a turn, which is required by the highway patrol and police to signal. And some of us remember when you had to put your arm out the window and that kind of stuff. But when you're trying to judge traffic that's ahead of you, it's disconcerting sometimes to see that somebody who did not signal is making a turn, and those that are go straight ahead don't need to make it.
Or they forget to turn off their blinker afterwards.
Well, that could be too, but anyway.
After you
So-
made your last comment, I did notice that the Auburn Police Department put a very nice video on how to use your blinkers on their Facebook page. So you might want to, it was very informational. I really appreciated it.
Oh, okay.
So they've
Well,
been trying to do some outreach and education on that. So that was great.
okay, well, when was that put on?
Oh, gosh, you made the comment, I think the last one, maybe a month or so ago, maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, well, it's still not,
Oh, it hasn't fixed everybody?
it's not resounding in the community. no.
Okay, well, we can always focus more on making sure everyone's using their blinkers. Is there anything else that anyone has for public comment?
Madam Mayor, just to announce, of course, to a big welcome to our Western States Endurance Run competitors, the crew, all the volunteers. It is race week. We have a VIP barbecue on Wednesday for the international runners. And of course, the race will start Saturday morning very early up at Palisades, and the finish line Saturday. We expect the winner to come in anytime around 6-ish, I guess, maybe. It's going to be hot. So, and they come in there at the Placer High School track. And so the stadium, and if you haven't had an opportunity to watch them come in, it's just phenomenal just to see these runners that are out there. So welcome to all those that are competing and again, supporting. We are very happy to have you here in the endurance capital of the world.
It's always great to see the first finishers, but it's also nice to see the last finishers. It's amazing to see how everyone in the community is cheering on those folks so that way they can finish before the time runs out on being able to complete the race. So
I think that the applause and the support for those last minute runners that are coming in just at the 30-hour mark is like phenomenal. People are coming in and they're
they've got like 30
sideways.
seconds
Oh
left.
my
and they're
God, it's
trying to finish.
phenomenal. So, and it's great.
And they have the hard part because they run during the daytime, during the light, and the first people run during the cool time and finish
And
finish early.
they're out for a shorter amount of time.
Yes.
It's those
They're not
long,
running
no.
for 30 hours
No.
straight.
Yeah.
It's quite intense. So
it is, so.
we're all very excited about that, I'm sure. Is there anything else?
Yes,
Councilwoman Sarah Sam.
just to tie both Councilwoman and Councilman's comments is that yes, we welcome everyone. And along the lines of being traffic minded, we will see some runners in that area. I'm fortunate enough to see those runners come by from my neighborhood. So just be kind, be aware, especially if you're driving late at night. We know we've got some great volunteers that want to assist our runners, but if everyone can help us out with that, that'd be great. And just as almost a little more point of personal privilege, I want to wish my husband a very happy 24th anniversary today.
Oh,
Yeah,
happy
yeah.
anniversary.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for spending it with us.
Well, you know, I don't even think he's got me on TV. I mean, if he does, I'm on mute, you know, this is one time. So, thank you.
Okay. Are there any other items? Okay,
Well, I do have another
okay,
comment.
Councilman
Yeah,
Holmes.
it's-
Yes.
I paid a visit to a new subdivision called Canyon Creek, I think it is. And I noticed that all the houses for sale are $1.2 million, which caused me to think a little bit about what can we do to provide housing for less
Affordable
cost?
housing is
Yeah,
very important.
affordable. Well, they told me that a significant, about half of them have been sold,
Mhm.
but so there are people that are buying them, but just seems to me we need to be able to provide more new affordable housing in Auburn.
And I don't think we have, and maybe correct me, we don't have that requirement like the county where 10% has to be affordable or in lieu opportunity.
That's right. The city doesn't currently have an inclusionary housing ordinance that would require a percentage to be affordable or an in lieu fee instead.
So I think that's a good point, something we should
Now-
probably think about.
Neither do we have the finances to provide incentives to those developers to have that affordable housing component in those houses. Something like Sacramento,
Yeah.
excuse me, Placer County does have.
Which
some
would be
incentives.
nice too. That's a very good point.
Though we don't have a lot of space to do big subdivisions like Roseville does and others in Placer County, that is a part of our general plan that we're looking at having residential over commercial space in Old Town and downtown and other types of uses. So maybe even though we don't have big green spaces that are within the city limits for us to use, we're looking at how we can redevelop some of the areas to provide some more affordable housing throughout the city.
Well, there is a space on Nevada Street that is currently owned by the Auburn Recreation District, and I've been talking to them and an architect to possibly put a co-housing project in there, which could be studio apartments, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, maybe even 3, and then some common spaces. So I'm looking further into that to see if we can get that started.
Yeah, they did a presentation on co-housing at the State Theater a few years back, and I went to that. It was really
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, yeah.
Looks like a pretty promising opportunity if it works out. Okay, if there's no other public comment, then we're gonna move on to council business. Councilwoman Mara wanted us to move the transient occupancy tax increase ballot measure to top of the agenda, so we're gonna start with that.
I wasn't ready. I thought.
Gotta flip you to the right page.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So in your packet tonight, there's a staff report, draft resolution for you. So we talked about this at the last council meeting. Council gave direction to staff to bring back potential language for a ballot measure to potentially be placed on the November 5th general election ballot. And so I'll give a little bit of history and where we're at with TOT, and then we'll get into the actual ballot language. So as council likely knows, but for the benefit of the public, our current TOT, which is transient oriented, wait,
Occupancy.
transient occupancy tax, sorry, is 8%. Most of the cities in Placer County, with the exception of Loomis, are at 10%. Placer County itself is at 8%. And so one of the issues that we've been looking at from a fairness standpoint, frankly, and to make sure that to provide additional revenue is increasing the TOT tax from 8% to 10%. That takes a vote of the people. It's a 50% plus one simple majority vote that would need to be voted on. The other issue that staff has identified that is 100% a fairness issue is currently Airbnb, short-term rentals, VRBO, anything like that does not pay TOT at all. And so despite those short-term rental folks having the same impacts as overnight lodging guests in a hotel, for example, Holiday Inn, they're not paying the same TOT tax to offset their impacts to the community. So that one, frankly, is just a 100% fairness issue. In order to put the ballot, to put the question to voters, we had to create actual ballot language. We did this in 2016. Measure failed with only 40% voting for it. Frankly, I think that the reason it failed was the ballot language was a little bit too attorney speak. No offense to my esteemed counsel next door here.
Here in 2016.
You just kicked me under the table. You didn't. But so what I did is I took the draft language from Gary's associates and then added some to it using ballot language from Colfax, which passed, and then also Roseville, which passed at like 70-something%, and kind of like melded it together in a Frankenstein sort of a ballot language. So I'm going to read that to you. I will say also that the language, I sent that out to one of the kind of campaign folks who does a lot of sales tax measures and ballot measures in the county here, from Meraki Consulting. She reviewed it for free, which was nice of her to do that. And then I also sent it and worked with Rob Haswell from Visit Placer, who spoke at the last council meeting, who has also worked on these kind of ballot issues. So I'll read the language. We're by law, we can only have 75 words. This is exactly 75 words. And you kind of tend to stretch out words as much as you can and put parentheses and commas to kind of make it make sense. So language that we've come up with is shall the measure funding police, fire, street maintenance, pothole repairs, parks, and for general government use for maintaining other city services by increasing the city's transient occupancy tax paid only by hotel and lodging guests on hotel rent by 2%, matching nearby city rates, and by extending it to short-term rentals to last until voters end it, raising approximately $162,000 in additional revenue per year that cannot be taken by the state be adopted. So that language really kind of matches up with what Roseville did. We went back and forth about putting the issue about the state not being able to take the funding. I think that's a really important thing because state tends to take some of that kind of funding, not TOT, but funding that cities put together. We went back and forth between putting the benefits up higher or the state taking the money up higher. Both Rob and Cherry felt that putting the benefits up higher made more sense. And so we flip-flopped back around. We worked on this for probably about 4 days off and on, back and forth. Language has been blessed by the city attorney as well for conformance with not only the election law, but the potential California Business Roundtable ballot initiative that has been removed from the ballot by the court. So we don't have to worry about that, but the language does comply with that if that went forward. And Gary can talk about that if we get into any more discussion about that. So at this point, I talked last time about the potential amount of revenue that this would generate. It's about $162,000 between both. And so at this point, staff believes that we should, my recommendation to council is to adopt the resolution that would place the measure on the ballot. The resolution has a language in it, and it also has the proposed ordinance that would be adopted by the council and as part of the voter guide as well. I can answer questions if you have questions.
Yes. A couple things. First of all, we've had 8%. Do you recall how long that's been in place?
I tried finding that. I couldn't find the answer to that, but it's been quite a while.
I think Jonathan said, didn't you?
1997.
Okay. And then have we ever had the short-term rental tax on the ballot ever?
The 2016 ballot initiative did include short-term rentals.
Oh, it did?
Yeah,
Okay, I
was
wasn't
both.
sure about that. Okay. And then with regard to the actual language for the ballot, I was just wondering, we have parks in there. We don't have jurisdiction over parks. Is that something we should keep in?
We have school park reserve.
True. Okay. Is it, you think
Yeah,
it's okay?
I think it's important to keep it in there.
Okay. And then the only other thing I know, well, we're exactly at 75. I was just thinking, should we put, shall the measure fund Auburn's police, fire, street and maintenance? I don't know if that makes any difference. I don't know what you guys think.
You could swap
I just kind
parks.
of like specificity.
You could swap parks for Auburn. We can't add any additional words. We'll be able to 75.
right.
So we'd have to,
I don't know. I don't know what you guys think. I just kind of think it's, maybe it allows people to feel that it's really just going to stay right in our little town. Anyway, not a big deal. So those are the only two questions I have.
Is the where it's, how it's located, is it obvious in, I'm trying to remember what my ballots have looked like in the past with measures.
It's on
Is
the
it obvious
resolu-
that it's going to the city versus any other kind of tax measure, or should we make that more apparent? I guess the city of Vernon.
Yeah, so when the county registrar puts this together, the registrar will assign a letter randomly wherever that person's at in the alphabetical order. And it will say City of Auburn ballot measure above it
Okay.
on the ballot when it's
Okay.
on.
So
But
that'll
it,
clarify it,
but it will only have the question that appears that you all agree to and put on.
but they'll separate state versus Auburn's specific.
Yeah, it goes to the state ones first and then the locals.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So they'll be able to tell, hopefully. We still could. Are there any other questions on this item? Councilman Holmes?
Well, I have a question. When these things come up for a vote, usually to make them satisfactory and to actually pass, usually has a committee that works to explain what's going on and defining a little bit more than what is the ballot language itself. So I'm just wondering if we've heard from anybody or any group that might be interested in helping push this.
so yeah, once the city council approves the ordinance and or the ballot language and it's sent over to the county, that's the extent of the city being able to spend any public resources on this process, right?
Yeah.
And so from that point, a campaign needs to be stood up that will be able to take it forward and be able to, promote the measure and hopefully have it be passed. Rob Haswell has talked to me about he's more than willing to support it. And I believe that Councilmember Amara has also had some discussions with folks. The city, council members, I can provide information to folks. I can't advocate for the measure to pass or not pass. All I can do is provide information and we would do that in the normal, same way that we provide information for anything else. But we can't spend city money to advocate for the measure to be passed.
Right.
So
Do you have more?
No, it was that clarification that I was going to make. So it's the advocacy with public funds that's the issue. So the city, once this is placed on the ballot, if you were to adopt the resolution tonight, urging a result saying you should vote yes or you should vote no, that is where the use of public funds can come in. But providing information, fair, impartial, factual information can still be done and often is by cities after they place a measure on the ballot.
The information that comes from the county, there's like a pro and a con argument that happens. How does that happen for these types of measures?
Yeah, so that's all, that will happen. So there's a process in the elections code for arguments in support, opposition, and then also rebuttals. Arguments in support go to the council first if you place a ballot, this question on the ballot. And then there's a hierarchy that the clerk will use in administering the elections code. Arguments in opposition may also be filed by the deadline. And the last time the city did this, there was an argument in opposition as well. And then there's the opportunity for rebuttal arguments, which are shorter. Those are submitted by the deadline to the clerk. The clerk then sends them over to the county and the county will publish them in the voter information guide.
and the resolution under section 5 says that the city council will authorize 2 council members to prepare and file the argument in support of the ordinance and to prepare and file rebuttal argument against the ordinance through a separate resolution at a later date.
Yeah.
So if assuming that the council moved forward to place it on the ballot, we'll bring that back to designate 2 council members to work on those ballot arguments. The other thing I wanted to point out, responding to Councilmember Holmes, Downtown Business Association has said that they'll help support the measure if council moves it forward. And so we do have them as well.
To follow up with Councilman Holmes, about whether or not there's a committee or a group that's willing to move this forward. There are funds that are going to need to be raised as well to put the statement in the ballot and things of that nature too. And that's something that we cannot use any city dollars for. So there is a fundraising component as well.
Are there any other questions from the council before we'll do public comment and then we'll do comments? Okay, is there any public comment on this item?
Aha,
Had a feeling.
he made it just in time.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor Riddell Harrison, council members, Rob Haswell, Visit Placer. Apologize for being late. Was not expecting the item to be moved up. So I was watching it at home while I ate dinner. So I got my car real quick in case when I saw it. Here, obviously, to urge you guys to consider moving forward with the measure. As Sean said, had a small role in kind of some of that language. I think he did him and his staff did a phenomenal job of putting together a question that I think really couches this in a way that voters can understand, that they will not they will know very readily who's paying for it. They won't be guessing. They'll know what they're getting for it. Those are really key issues when you talk about trying to pass these things. I have spoken with Councilwoman Amara about helping out. Obviously, yeah, you got to have somewhat of a campaign. I do think there's will for it. As I think we all know now, there were 3 cities that passed the measure in 22. Only one of them had a campaign, so that's worth noting. It's also worth noting that none of them had opposition arguments. So that's sometimes how a thing is phrased will actually bring people out against it or not, right? So that's something that I think the recent history is very favorable for. So as I said the last time, I think it's a very sound bet for the city to make when you think about the revenue streams, the annual revenue streams versus the cost. As the city attorney was saying, the city can put out fact-based information. And it's my opinion that fact-based on something like this is really what you really need. I think as people understand that this is for, infrastructure and city services, that folks that are coming into our community and enjoying it, should be paying a fair share for. And in the case of the short-term rentals, they're not paying anything at all. So I think it's when people are able to know, what is coming out of it, who's paying it, those are all things that I think are on the informational side. So I think there's just a lot of pluses and not many negatives as far as I could see. So I think it's well worth considering going forward. So thank you very much for your time. And again, apologize for the late arrival.
Plenty of time. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Margarita Swan, and I'm going to be short and sweet.
You might have to move the microphone down a little bit.
I'm sorry.
Move the microphone down. Thank you.
My name is Margarita Swan. I own the Golden Swan Jewelry, and my comment is short and sweet. I'm always into saving money, and I believe in raising the TOT tax. Very simple. We have a big freeway going through here that just aggravated me today, and there's a lot of hotels, and we can use a few more. And 10% is not going to make those travelers poor. But a sales tax you can't count on, because the way the economy is, more and more businesses go out of business and new sales tax goes down the tube. So I'm for the measure. I support you all in this. I cannot vote on it because I'm outside of the city limits. So I wish you all good luck and save money.
Thank you. There any other public comment on this item?
And also just for the record, you received a public comment from Mr. Kramer in support of this item.
Yes, I did. Thank you. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council for comments. Councilwoman Delacour.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I appreciate, Rob, thank you for coming and no problem being late. We moved the agenda item on you, so no worries. And I made, I've spoken on this issue at our last meeting, and so I think that folks know where I'm coming from, but I want to make it clear that I am not opposed to raising the TOT to 10% and including the Airbnbs under that umbrella as well. I think that it's important to ensure that we level the playing field because right now, short-term housing for hotel, they pay, but the Airbnbs do not. And it's simply because at the time that the city council adopted the ordinance, Airbnbs did not exist. So they didn't have to participate in that particular part of it. So I don't have a problem with making a level playing field. I also don't have an issue with raising it to 10%. Roseville, Rockland, and Lincoln have 10%. There are many jurisdictions that have much higher. For example, I was in Tuolumne County a couple of weeks ago, and there it's 12% of all places. Jackson, 12%. Mariposa, 12%. So South Lake Tahoe, 12%. So 10% to me is also a reasonable amount. My issue truly is just with regards to the timing of all of this. And as you know, we've been talking with the county about a joint effort to raise the TOT and bring Airbnbs under TOT. And it was, I thought that it would be beneficial to work with the county so that we could have their cooperation in marketing and so forth. It would be an easier effort, I guess, to move something forward. Also, it would make the TOT the same in the city and immediately outside of the city. The county is not going to be interested in pursuing TOT on this election cycle. They are pursuing the sales tax proposal in South County, and frankly, there's just not enough time to even bring it to their attention. So moving forward now means that we won't have that opportunity to work with the county. And there may be those that then argue against our effort because people might just stay in the unincorporated area instead of our city. I don't necessarily believe that's a strong argument, but I'm saying that that is certainly something that can be used against us. I'm also concerned because this comes so close to the announcement of our fiscal emergency and our deficit that's pending. We've talked about TOT, it's been out there, but all of a sudden, again, it's that relationship piece. We've talked about it in terms of all of a sudden we've got to hurry up and get it on the ballot now. And I'm very concerned about how that looks because again, we got ourselves into this mess. It's not entirely our fault, but we did get ourselves into an issue with our deficit. And we really need to do our homework and do some serious cost cutting measures to keep our house in order before we go to the electorate and ask them to vote on an additional tax measure. Now, I understand again, the tax is not paid by the residents. It's paid by those that are staying at Airbnbs or at the hotels. But it is still the electorate that has to vote to support the tax measure. So I'm concerned with the timing from that perspective as well, as it appears that may not be the intent of some of my colleagues, but it appears that we're doing this because we find ourselves in the situation. The TOT only raises about $162,000 a year, so it certainly does not raise a significant amount. 162 is better than nothing. But when we're facing a structural deficit of between $500,000 to $700,000 or $800,000 per year, that's another thing. The other thing that I think about is that because we've got this structural deficit that's looming, we were able to make up the difference in the 24-25 year. We haven't adopted the budget yet, but we've obviously discussed it and talked about the various ways we were going to make up those dollars, the $1.9 million. But we have a problem, and certainly we need to diversify our revenue, and economic development is incredibly important. But we may have to look at another measure that raises a substantial amount of funds. And I have a problem with going to the electorate with TOT and then in a year or two deciding that if we want to bring our public safety services up to a better level, we're going to have to go out for another tax measure. And the electorate saying, well, gee whiz, we just voted to support a tax measure a couple years ago, and now you're coming back. And that inhibits or lessens our chances to get something greater later down the road. Now, we know Measure S, which I voted for 4 years ago. We weren't able to get sufficient votes on that, and it didn't pass. But the reality is we're going to have to make some significant cuts to our budget. Significant. It's going to affect every facet of city government. And if people want to go back to that level of standard, a higher level of service, we're going to have to do something. And that may include a bigger proposal. And I just don't want that to be used against us as well. We just passed a TOT and now you're coming back to the trough for something more. It just puts us in a difficult position. So because of the timing, not the merits, but because of the timing, I cannot support putting this on the ballot for this election cycle. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Mar.
Thank you very much. Well, you know where I stand. I said it last time, there's a lot of positives. And in my opinion, this is a opportunity that's long overdue. I've been advocating this for a long time, and happily, I have spoken with a lot of individuals in these last 2 weeks. And actually, when I was mayor, I was advocating for it, and I really haven't received many negatives. As you said, there's really not many negatives. As far as, you know, putting it off so we can do something bigger and better, I totally disagree that this will lessen any other opportunity in the future. In fact, I think it'll raise an awareness that we are really trying to fix our situation in Auburn. We really we're proactive with future fiscal revenue. And I think it's very clear. I also want to make it very clear. This is not a local tax for Auburn citizens. This is a user tax for visitors who come, and as Rob Haswell said, as our city manager said, for users who come in and use our roads, our police. And for us, this is long overdue, and we can't keep kicking the can down the road. It's time now. We have to mind our store, and this is one thing we have to do, to mind our store. Anyway, I think it's an opportunity. I'm fully in support of it, and I will do as much as I can to help with this if we put it on the ballot. And I hope that, you know, everybody else is supportive, because I feel it is an opportunity for, again, long-term fiscal management, and it'll increase as the years go on, in my opinion, because hopefully we'll get more hotels, as Margarita advocated, and we will also get more Airbnbs, as you know, with the endurance capital of the world. And just this weekend, I'm sure we're full, and we have many events. And we're lucky that we are a place with natural resources. And so people do come here. So it's important for us to make sure that just our local citizens aren't paying for all of the services that they receive, and they pay their fair share. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Holmes.
Yes. Well, in the past, one of our significant TOT generators was the Powers Mansion Inn. And as most of you know, that has been under repair, and it looks like they're moving forward on getting it reopened. And so that, when that occurs, there'll be a significant increase in the amount of revenue generated from that. So I'm in favor of moving forward with getting this on the ballot, and as long as we can get a group of people to basically do the campaign, I think it'll pass.
Thank you. Councilwoman Sierra Salmon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate the concerns that have been leveled. In fact, in a previous meeting, I had some of those same concerns. And then I was able to just really take a step back and listen to other constituents. And the concern is more that why haven't we done this before? Not that we're doing this now as a reaction. And so that removed one of my concerns, is that they're right. This should have been happening a long time ago. And so I'm glad that we're taking those steps. Now, is the timing, are the optics great? No. But facts are facts. We do need to diversify our revenue. We also need to cut cost. I'm not seeing where it would be unreasonable to do both. And so I am in favor of this moving forward. And I also will go on public record to support this.
Thank you. I've been talking with city staff about adding Airbnbs to the TOT for pretty much the whole time I've been on council, because it seems like it's a reasonable thing that we should have done a very long time ago. I wasn't so sure about the timing of this either, but the more that I've thought it through and the more I've talked to people, Auburn has a history of being risk averse and leaving money on the table. And so we've done that with our fees. We've done that with development. We've done that so many times because nothing was ever the right time. And I think that we don't have the time to waste anymore. We need to move forward with things that are going to diversify our revenue. We can't stop doing city business just because we have a financial situation that we need to sort out. We need to move things forward that need to be done in order for us to create a better financial situation for the city. And I think Auburn deserves just as much from our visitors as Roseville and Colfax and Lincoln, all the other cities that do this as well. I don't know why we would deserve less. So I think that it makes logical sense. I've talked to many of my constituents. I have not found one person who thinks this is a bad idea. Yeah, it's at the same time as our fiscal emergency, which may have pushed it forward a little faster, but I think that that's not necessarily a bad thing. We do need to move forward faster. We've been going too slow on diversifying our revenue, and this is making us move things as fast as we probably should be in getting things together to make sure that we can afford to provide the services that our constituents want. So I am also in support of this and would be happy to help with any campaign as much as I can. Okay, if there's no other comments, then I'm open to a motion.
We have public comment.
Oh, sorry, public comment. Wait, you already did that. We did that before we did our comments. So we did public comment. We're good.
Good job.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, all right.
Councilwoman Morrow?
I move we adopt the attached resolution placed in a ballot measure on the November 5th, 2024 general election to amend sections 33.185 to section 33.197 of the Auburn Municipal Code regarding the city's transient occupancy tax, TOT, to change the definition of an operator and impose an obligation to collect the TOT by short-term rental operations and increase the TOT from 8% to 10%.
I'll second.
Madam Mayor, to the question, if I may.
Sure.
I will be voting no on this particular motion, but I just want to make it clear that I'm not opposed to raising the TOT. Again, my voting no does not at all mean that I'm going to be actively campaigning against the proposal. I will remain neutral. So I just want to make sure it's very clear that I support the intent. It's just the timing issue that I have an issue with. So I just want to go on the record so I don't want people to expect me to be leading any charge against the measure. I'm not going to get involved in it from that perspective. My issue really is the timing, not the merits. I think that we should have a level playing field. So thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
That's noted. Thank you. Okay, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Dowden Calvillo.
No.
Amara.
Yes.
Holmes.
Aye.
Sierra Sammons.
Aye.
Mayor Riddell Harris.
Aye, motion carries. Moving on to, sorry, I got to go back to my agenda. Item number 12, presentation of the FY 22-23 audit comprehensive financial report.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members, Gretchen Johnson, your finance director. I'm going to give a brief introduction. The item before you is to have our auditing consultant MUN CPAs deliver a presentation on our long-awaited fiscal year 22-23 audited comprehensive financial reports. As a city, as a government, we are required to publish these financial reports, and we choose in good practice to hire an independent third party. The independent third party is a layer of oversight to help detect and prevent fraud or mismanagement. And there are many other benefits to this relationship with the CPA consultant. There's transparency and accountability, financial reporting, compliance with regulations, creditworthiness and investment, and then, of course, a tool for our budgeting and planning. So with that, I will go ahead and pass it over to Erica Pastor with MUN CPAs to do the presentation.
Clicker right here. Yeah, just double check that it's on.
Yeah.
Oh, it looks like it's,
Where am I?
you'll click it.
Okay, perfect. I think that'll work. Good evening, everybody. Again, my name is Erica Pastor. I'm a partner at MUN CPAs. We're a firm out of Sacramento and here to present the audit results for the June 30th, 2023 audit. So the first and most important thing to emphasize when we are performing an audit is establishing whose responsibility is what in terms of an audit. We want to emphasize that these are management's financial statements, okay? All of the information that is in the report, the financial statements, the numbers, the information are all representation of management. We help compile the information, and then we come in as your independent auditors and provide our independent audit opinion on whether or not the financial statements are being presented in accordance with GAAP, and that stands for Generally Accepted Accounting Principles, and whether or not there are any significant errors in your financial statements. So again, it's just the emphasis that these are management's financial statements. Okay. Our audit process began in October of 2023. We performed we call this our interim field work during this time. This is when we want to obtain an understanding of what went on during the year. So we have discussions with management. We will review council minutes to see what resolutions were approved. We'll take a look at significant agreements. Again, we want to gather as much information so we can take that with us when we start to audit and look at the numbers. During this time, we also perform a review of the city's internal controls as it relates to financial processes. So we look at the cash receipts coming in, we look at disbursements going out, we look at how payroll is being processed. We look at journal entries, bank reconciliations, which are really important, and financial reporting, because ultimately we want to make sure as these transactions are getting recorded during the year that they're being recorded accurately so that they can provide you with the financial information to provide your, so you can make your decisions. So we want to make sure that those are accurate during the year. Okay. We came back right a month later in November of 2023. To perform the year-end portion of our fieldwork. And this is when we actually take a look at the numbers. We did encounter some challenges this year, which I'll be going over in a couple slides. But overall, some of the tests that we perform to audit your numbers is we send out confirmations to your financial institutions. So we want to make sure those balances are in line with what's being presented on your bank reconciliations. We do testing of accounts receivables and accounts payable. So we look at a lot of transactions that happen right before and after the year-end cutoff to make sure that those are being recorded in the proper period. We do various detailed tests of transactions. And then we perform a high-level analytical review. So again, we want to make sure all the information we've gathered through our testing, through inquiry with management, through reviews of resolution, that those numbers make sense and that they're being supported. Okay. Another part of the audit that we do is a single audit, and this is when an entity expends over $750,000 in federal expenditures. So we do a separate compliance audit related to that. And then once all of the numbers are finalized and we have all the documentation we need to support the numbers, we do assist in the preparation of the financial statements and the footnotes. In terms of audit reporting, we do issue about 5 different letters as a result of our audit. You have the first is your independent auditor's report. The second is a GAS report that stands for Government Auditing Standards. The second is your uniform guidance or your federal single audit report. And then there's a management letter as well as a conclusion letter to those charged with governance. So I'll go over all of those reports. So your ACFR. So I believe Gretchen all gave you a nice little big packet of your financial statements. That's your annual comprehensive financial report. A little big tongue twister there. So it's your ACFR is what we like to refer to as short. And those financial statements contain three main sections. You're going to see your introductory section, a financial section, and a statistical section. And the financial section is what we concentrate on. We do review the introductory section as well as the statistical section, but those are kind of a review to make sure all the numbers are in line. The financial section is where you'll find the independent auditor's report as well as the management's discussion analysis, which is a document prepared by management that kind of is a high-level overview of what occurred during the year. And then following that are going to be your actual financial statements and then your notes, which describe all of the information that's being presented. So in terms of an audit can receive four different types of opinion. There's an unmodified opinion, a modified opinion, an adverse opinion, and a disclaimer opinion. So for fiscal year 2023, the city was issued an unmodified, or I call it a clean opinion. That's the easiest way to say it, which indicates that there are no material or large misstatements as they are being presented in this report. And we do believe that they're being presented in accordance with GAAP. Okay. The next letter that we issue is a GAS letter. Again, this is government auditing standards. This letter would report to you any significant findings during the audit. So as I mentioned, we did have a few challenges that we encountered for the 23 audit. The first finding is a material weakness, and a material weakness means that there is a high risk that there is potential for a number to be misstated. And so because of the number of adjustments we had this year, we did issue a material weakness. There were several issues that we had with posting accruals, bank reconciliations not being accurate, grants not being recorded in terms of the receivable. Again, there were about 20 adjustments total this year that related, about 20 adjustments total. So because of that, again, as the initial trial balance that's presented as to be audited, that's what you expect to be good and final. You know, ultimately, it is normal to have a few adjustments here and there when we do an audit, but when you start to get up into that higher number, you have to start to take a look at the controls and what's happening during the year. And a lot of that I'll go over is, I'm sure you're aware that the city did go through an ERP implementation that happened in fiscal year 23, and that took place in May. So it was a really cutoff from the year. So we were auditing two different systems throughout the year, in addition just to the turnover between, the city managers and the different finance directors that we had here did contribute to some of that. Okay. The next finding is a significant deficiency. So this is categorized, it's lower than a material weakness, but would still warrant your attention. And this is mainly related to grants. So as I mentioned, grants are really important in terms of reconciling because, for example, if you have a grant that's a reimbursable grant, you want to make sure that your financials are also showing the receipt of that money, right? So it's essentially a net zero effect. So in this instance, we found a grant that I believe there was about $400,000 in expenditures that had been spent, but the receivable portion had not yet been recorded. So we want to make sure, again, that these grants are being reconciled at year end and all the transactions are being recorded properly. And then the last finding is just in relation to timing. Obviously, we know that this audit is late. So normally audits are due to the SEO office in December 31st, and any single audits are due March 31st. And because of the delay, we just have to report that as a compliance finding. Okay. The uniform guidance audit. So this was an audit due to your federal funding expenditures. Again, any entity that expends more than $750,000 in federal funds is required a single audit. Of the city, let me see, I think the city had a total of $3.6 million being reported. A lot of that is related to outstanding home loans that the city has. So it's about 2.17 is related to home loans. The remaining balance, 940, is related to some airport funds that were received. So those are the two major programs that we tested. We did not find any findings in relation to compliance for those federal funds. So we don't have, so again, we have a clean opinion, an unmodified opinion on those major programs. And it's the same finding in relation to the delay of the report. Okay. The management letter. So the management letter reports to you any, I will call them kind of your lowest level type of finding, recommendations for improvement, things that we don't feel that will necessarily result in a material misstatement. A lot of these are repeat findings from prior years, so they have been reported to management. Again, I think just with the turnover, things just haven't had a chance to really be implemented. So I won't go over these all in detail, but there's a few of them on there. A lot of them have to do with just account reconciliations. There's a lot of old stuff that the city has on their books that just really hasn't been cleaned up. So it's really looking through those accounts, writing off what's not valid anymore. There's a lot of deposit accounts, small little liability accounts, things like that, that are on there. And again, with the city changing ERP systems, that would have been a great time to clean up. But again, I just think with timing that wasn't able to happen. So as you can see here, again, there's a few items related to account reconciliations, deposits, compensated absences, making sure journal entries are reviewed, again, providing proper support when it comes to payroll, and things like that. So just, again, these are kind of more minor items that we wouldn't necessarily think would result in a material misstatement, but definitely recommendations for improvement. And the last letter that we issue is a conclusion letter. This hopefully will sum everything up, some of the bigger points. One of the things we're required to report to you are any accounting policies that were significantly changed during the year. There were none that applied to the city, so we had no changes in accounting for announcements, no changes in disclosures. Accounting estimates were required to disclose to you just because they contain assumptions that we have to review. They're not black and white numbers. So we have to take a look at those assumptions, make sure they're reasonable, and they were. And so those are the different estimates that we had to take a look at. Difficulties encountered in performing the audit. Again, so we're here a year later. So there was a delay in the audit. There was a due date set for audit schedules, and those just weren't met, kind of on both sides. So we had initially scheduled this audit for November of 2023. That was pretty quick turnaround because your 2022 audit had just been issued in, I think it was June, as well. And again, between the ERP implementation, and I believe that was right when your admin service director had just left in October, and we started the audit in November. So, a little bit too quick, maybe. Could have been a little bit more prepared, I think, in that sense, just to prevent a lot of more audit adjustments could have happened. So that's really it, I think, is in terms of difficulties, is just the back and forth of schedules, because once we set aside a week and the city sets aside a week to do that audit and things don't get done, you're pushing stuff, when city's busy, we're busy, and it's just a lot of back and forth emails is really what happened. So from about January through March, a lot of cleanup was still going on. Adjustments were still being posted at that time. And then the draft was finally provided to management in May, and then it takes time for the draft to get reviewed, and then the final over in June. Okay. We did not have any disagreements with management. Again, we worked together to try to get everything done. Gretchen thankfully came on board at the tail end to try to wrap everything up. So she was of help with Christina. Again, audit adjustments, there was about 20 total audit adjustments that kind of spanned different audit areas. It wasn't concentrated in one audit area. And then lastly, we're also required to communicate to you past audit adjustments. What those are in regular terms are just adjustments that are kind of smaller in nature that we didn't end up booking. We found an error, but we didn't end up booking because we didn't feel it would materially change the financial statements. Okay. So a summary of all of our 5 audit reports. Again, as the financials are being presented to you here in this ACFR, it is an unmodified clean audit opinion. Overall, 20 audit adjustments it took to get there, but it is, again, clean as they are standing now. 1 material weakness, 1 significant deficiency, and 1 compliance exception. And then there were 10 recommendations for improvement. Single audit, we had no issues. What I will say about the city now, especially, you have Sean coming on board and with Gretchen on board, I just think that as long as we have consistency here, the city can definitely move in the right direction. I think, again, a lot of it is just the turnover and the focus, gets lost, obviously, when there's turnover. So I just want to thank the accounting team, because an audit is a lot of work. We request a lot of information to get this done. So it's definitely a collaborative effort to get done. So thank you. And I'm here to answer any questions about the audit process or the audit reports that were issued.
Thank you so much for that. Councilwoman Dowden Cavillo.
Yes, thank you very much. So this is a long time coming, and I'm sure that my colleagues agree that there's a lot of frustration from our perspective on getting this so incredibly late. That there's joint responsibility in that, but not having this information earlier has really put us in a tremendous bind, and it's incredibly frustrating. So I'm glad to finally see it. I haven't had the opportunity to read through this because we just got it now on the dais. So I wish that I would have had the opportunity to take a look at this over the weekend so that I could really go through it and ask more pointed questions. So now I'll have to do that with Sean, and I'm sure that he'll be successful in answering them for me. So just a little frustrated with that. Can you tell me where in this document you discuss the 20 audit adjustments and the 10 recommendations for improvement?
Sure, that's actually going to be in a separate letter. So I believe we stuck them in right underneath the cover. So there's two different letters in there. There's a management letter, and then there's a kind of a conclusion letter. It's on letterhead.
Okay, so
Yes,
so the management letter, what is in this?
that's your 10 recommendations for improvement.
Okay, and then the other one?
The other one is the audit conclusion letter, and the back of that has two different attachments, which will include the adjustments.
And it was, it's disturbing to hear that some of the problems that you talked about with regards to grants, that we showed the expenditure, but not the revenue coming in. Posting accruals, I think you said something about sick leave. Yes, payout. We had, it looks like we just had quite a few deficiencies. You gave us a summary on page 152. And I'm assuming that this audit's going to discuss those more in depth, is exactly what that meant for us.
All the findings are reported in the letter.
Okay.
So yeah, so the big book you received is just the financial statements.
Okay, all
Mhm.
right. So the recommendations in one, and then the
Mhm.
other one's the audit. Okay,
Mhm.
so I'll again, not having the opportunity to take a look at these beforehand, make it
Mhm.
difficult to really ask any specific questions, because I really wanted to understand what the recommendations were, what the deficiencies were, which you did provide us with some information. Generally speaking, when do we get our audits? And this might be a question for staff. I mean, in a perfect world, when would we get the 2022-23 audit? Or when can we expect the next audit, the 23-24?
So in a perfect world, most of our governmental clients will issue by the end of that calendar year. So a June 30th year-end client would issue definitely by December 31st.
So by December 31st,
Mhm.
2023?
Correct.
So we're about 6 months late.
Mhm.
So is that going, because you had mentioned that the audit before that was late,
Yes.
and I'm not sure why it was late either, but you had mentioned that this audit was late in part because the other audit was late. So what does that mean for our next audit? If we're 6 months late now, what does that mean? I know we have another contractor, so maybe the
Yes.
questions are not going to be posed to you. I guess staff,
Mhm.
do you feel that we're going to have any difficulty in getting the audit conducted and presented to us by December 31st, 2024?
I'll actually defer to Gretchen because she's the day-to-day working with the auditors, but assuming that we're closing our books on time, which we will, then we shouldn't have an issue, but I'll let Gretchen respond.
Definitely a matter that we've been trying to get ahead of through this process. And it's a question that I did ask of our new contractor that's coming on board. How can we get back on track? They also did echo well, we're already a little bit behind right now.
We are 6 months behind, right?
Yes, and we have a meeting with the new contractor tomorrow. So that'll help inform the steps necessary. However, internally, working with my team, we've already established a fiscal year-end calendar, kind of working our way backwards to try to make sure that we do what needs to happen in order to close our books absolutely no later than October. And that'll at least give us a chance in hitting a December type of a time frame. My instinct tells me it might be more in the January, February, but again, that's a lot quicker than we did this.
Mhm. And I don't know what the history's been for the city and, with COVID and everything happening, how many audits have been late since, I got back on the council in 2020. I don't know what that data is. Obviously, we heard that 2022 was late, 2023 is late. I don't know if 2021 was late or not. I don't know, but whatever we can do to get back on track. Again, I appreciate that we're 6 months behind and that's a lot of catching up, but it's so incredibly important that we get on track, because if we had this information 6 months ago, we could have curbed spending and not found ourselves in the situation that we were. I feel like we were kind of flying blind without having that kind of data. Something that I've raised, the fact that we had, we refinanced our unfunded liability with the PERS. And that was supposed to save us $850,000 for a number of years. And we made decisions specifically with regards to hiring new firefighters with that in mind. At least I know I did, in good conscience. We have this $850,000 savings that I'm being told we're going to realize over a number of years. And then we established a reserve just in case we get into a point where we're going to have to owe again because, well, it's PERS and their investment and it happens. And then to find out that we realized those savings for 2 years and that's it. And then we owed. And so all of a sudden, we're not saving $850,000. We're paying $239,000. That is $1 million right there. So I'm just saying, again, whatever we can do to get back on track, make sure that we can do that. And whatever we as a council, can do to help facilitate that, please, because I know we have a new contractor, please let us know, because it is very important that we have this data available and so that we can course correct in a timely manner and not be subjected to these kinds of whims. So thank you so much.
I know this is a side conversation a little bit, but just because our costs went up doesn't mean we didn't get the savings. It means we got the savings and then the costs continued to go up. So we have additional costs. It doesn't mean that savings went away. We would even owe more money had we not done that. So there was still a benefit of doing that. We just the cost went up even further than we expected, and that created additional costs, correct? Yeah,
absolutely. And I don't mean to.
I just want to make sure everyone's clear that we didn't lose that money in some way.
We didn't lose it. And absolutely, we did the right thing by refinancing it. Absolutely. We would have owed even more.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that we made decisions based on staffing and things of that
We thought we would
nature,
have money to
thinking that we would have that money because we refinanced and we're told, oh, we're super funded and we're going to be super funded for several years. And that really wasn't the case.
I
So
just wanted to clarify that.
yeah,
Thank
you're
you.
right. But, and I didn't mean to insinuate otherwise, but no, it just, the savings, we would have been paying
would have
$1
been
million
worth paying.
more.
Yep.
So yes, thank you.
I just wanted to add something quickly too. Not only with the audit being late, so we weren't able to see, but that's also incumbent on staff to bring that to you because staff should be letting you know where we're at. And so we didn't have staff that was able to do that. We do now. And so we'll be doing quarterly updates. So we don't need to wait for the end of the audit, which is done, more than 6 months after the fiscal year is closed. We would have found the structural deficit earlier, but if staff had been bringing you quarterly, even if we would have been providing that financial information to you more regularly, we would have also seen it quicker. So it's twofold. It's both.
Councilwoman Martin?
So what I hear you saying is that we don't just rely on the audit.
No.
We have to rely on ourselves and our staff and do more. So our updates were not quarterly. We have to do them more frequently.
Yeah, I mean, typically you do, a mid-year budget update, right?
Yeah.
And so if we had accurate information at the mid-year, which we did this year, but previously we didn't, as far as I can tell. So it's sort of like the information that you got wasn't complete. The information that you got this last mid-year update when I was here with Andy was as complete as we had it, but we also didn't have the audit done, so we didn't have the whole picture. But we can't just rely on the auditor to tell us where we're at financially. That's a function of staff. The auditor is auditing staff, right? And so we need to be giving you that information, and we've made that commitment to you that we'll continue to do that on a quarterly basis.
Okay. And there's no way to predict the PERS situation from year to year.
I mean, investments are what investments are, and
Yeah.
I guess the only kind of prediction with PERS is that they're probably going to be wrong. That's about all I can.
So my only question, I have we just received this, so I was kind of skimming here. So when you talk about the material weaknesses, you said we have 20. Are those the 20 that are listed in?
Yes, attachment A or B. I forget which attachment it is, but it's on the back of the letter.
Okay. And then our staff is the one that responded to them already then?
What do you mean, shown it? Yes. So what happens is as we perform an audit, we're going through the numbers and checking if they're right. And then anytime we, find an error or something that needs to be recorded, we will bring that to management and say, hey, do you guys agree with this? Do you not agree with this? Do we have support? Are we missing information? We want to make sure we all get it right. And then, yes, they go ahead and post that to their system so then we agree.
Okay.
Mhm.
And is there, I will read it, but first of all, is 20 then you said is a little high?
It's a little high. And if you look at some of the dollar amounts on there, it's a little high again. So sometimes you can have 20 tiny adjustments, right? Sometimes miss a classification, someone accidentally transposed a number, or things like that. But what we look at is we kind of look at the quality, if you want to say, or, like what was the substance of the adjustment? Why did this happen? Not just a miscoding, not just because somebody keyed in the wrong number or account number. So we kind of take a look at the big picture, and that's how we assess whether it's a material weakness or not.
I see. Okay.
Mhm.
And it looks like of the 20, it seems like just skimming,
Mhm, mhm.
they've been addressed more
They've-
or less.
Yes, they've been addressed. So especially with Gretchen said, now that her staff has like a financial close checklist and a task to perform, all of these reconciliations should be looked at prior to giving the trial balance to the auditors to be audited.
Okay.
So as long as all of those procedures are in place, you wouldn't anticipate as many adjustments going forward.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Councilman Holmes?
Yes, I too wish we had received this a bit earlier, maybe a couple of days ago to go through this, but I'm curious on the management letter. It lists some issues, and then it says repeat. And is that something that an earlier audit
Yes.
What-
So it was reported in
should
an
have
earlier
corrected-
audit.
should have been corrected?
Yes, ideally. So again, I think what's happened is with the change in management, the change in the admin service director, I don't know that there was, again, I don't know exactly what happened, but I'm guessing just the time of focusing on what those recommendations were just weren't implemented, but they were reported in a prior audit.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Councilman Salmons?
Well, thank you for your presentation. And yes, I'll just echo my colleagues. It would have been nice to be able to really take a deep dive to see specifically, like say what those 20 issues were. But I also see that there's already been some proactive approaches
Mhm.
to make sure this doesn't happen again. I know not everyone's perfect. And like you've mentioned, there's people transpose things all the time. But yeah, to see that there was a significant amount of issues and then knowing that there were repeat issues is a little concerning. But again, we've got some, I think some good staff and some practices already put into place. So that's very reassuring.
Correct. And again, the timing of it all was, the prior admin service director had left, I think it was end of October. And then the current staff at that time had said, well, no, we can still be ready November. And I think that's kind of where, things might have fell through because then you're getting a consultant to come in and try to help close it when the prior admin service director had just left.
Thank you. I'm not going to say what everyone else said. This, I guess, question is more for Gretchen. The audit is fine, but it's at the end after everything's already happened. Do we have the fiscal policies in place to make sure that we're checking things as we go and that we're catching things earlier and so that we don't have to have a lot of audit findings at the end?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's part of the quarterly updates that we're going to start doing as well. And during the budget development process, I've been looking probably every other week at where we are financially and updating just my own spreadsheets to make sure that we're not missing anything. So it's really eyes on the matter is what it takes to make sure that we're seeing what we need to see ahead of time. And I think with the focus on it now, as long as the people are here to be looking at it and reporting out and taking corrective action where necessary, I think you're in good hands to see a much better audit next time.
Have you, since you've been around a little bit now, a few months, have you noticed that there were some policies and procedures that weren't in place that you're kind of working on to make sure that we have the policies that we need in order to be able to function correctly?
Yes, so there's definitely an area in finance where some fiscal policies can be either updated from years past or implemented entirely new in general. Just the example of the year-end checklist, there wasn't one. And that is a critical component of every fiscal year end to make sure that you're hitting all of the boxes that need to be checked. There's also internal control processes, who's reviewing work, who's approving work, and making sure it's not the same person. And again, we're a very small staff. So sometimes you just have to make choices and make sure that the right staff are doing the right work and put your trust in them. But with the big items, you need to make sure that there are controls put in place. And I'm definitely working with that, working with the team and coming up with, we should do something. You know, there's just there are things that we can do better and we're chipping away at it.
Great. Thank you so much for that.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Sure. Okay, that's all I had. Is there any other questions or comments from?
I just wanted to say that I've had an opportunity to speak with Gretchen, and I do feel confident that going forward, we're going to put those procedures in place, you know, the end of the year checklist, those kinds of things that you've talked about. I think we're in a much better position, and so I appreciate that. So I did want to say that. Thank you very much.
Yep. I think we all appreciate Gretchen coming on board. Is there any public comment on this item? Okay. We need to adopt a resolution. No, nope, I'm wrong.
We just received it.
Well, this was just informational. So thank you very much for
Thank you very much. And it's been a pleasure serving Lincoln.
Thank
I mean, to Auburn. Yes.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 13, which is fiscal year 2024-25 final budget adoption. Gretchen again.
Good evening, Gretchen Johnson, your finance director. Get to my right item here. Should be a budget coming up here.
Just to let you know.
Okay, so yes, we've been talking a lot about budget for the past several months, or a few months since I've been here. So the item before you is to adopt a resolution to approve the fiscal year 24-25 final budget of $35,419,084, to set the general fund reserves at $5,292,518, and set the appropriation limit at $24,063,402. Okay. So a little bit of background, but not to belabor this because I know we've spent a lot of time on this already. But we launched into the development of this budget in March when the mid-year financial update and budget adjustments came to council. At that time, there were 2 years where we're showing a general fund deficit with a multi-year structural deficit attached to that presentation. The use of general fund reserves for those 2 years collectively was $3.2 million. And then on May 13th, we had an opportunity to bring forward as soon as we could what we knew about the development of the 24-25 budget. At that time, with all of the departments' requests, we were looking at a potential deficit of about 1.9 million. And then departments and staff went back and scrubbed the budgets to try to defer as many costs as possible. We also implemented a hiring freeze and found some savings with freezing 4 positions, and were able to deliver a proposed budget on June 10th with a deficit of 195,000 using general fund reserves for that. But we have always maintained using the 881,000 from the ARPA fund redirection. We've maintained that as a solution through this whole process. And then on June 17th, the council approved a declaration of fiscal emergency. That effort fiscally alone, that was able to reduce the demand on general fund reserves. And this is a net number that you're seeing here of 32,285. The actual savings to the general fund was closer to 235,000. But I'll get into the reason for that net adjustment at this time. We're still looking, of course, at using our ARPA funds to balance the budget. So I'll start on the right side here of this slide. The final budget adjustment since proposed, since you recently just heard the proposed, I'm focusing on the changes. There's a handful of them, but the personnel cost reductions associated with the fiscal emergency, you have 235,000 in the general fund, 17,000 in transit, and about 7,000 in the sewer fund. So citywide, there's 260,444 in total personnel cost savings associated to the fiscal emergency. But then we also went forward with a RFP for a new auditing services firm. We've been working on that for a few months, and that's now been awarded. However, it did come at an increased cost to us. And so there's an increase of 27,000 factored into the final budget, as well as the ongoing effort for the impact study services related to AB 1600. There's a $45,000 one-time adjustment in our building inspection budget in the general fund. And then outside of the fund, we've included in the sewer fund for a replacement line, $500,000 expense, less the first year revenue anticipated for that of $25,000. And then in our facilities and equipment fund, we've adjusted it to the actual impact fee revenue collected this current year. So there was an increase in revenue of 16,500, and then a reduction in the capital costs in the expenses of about 8,000. And that's to balance the fund to zero. So there was neither a positive or negative fund balance in that fund. And then lastly is the redevelopment property tax fund. And tonight on the consent agenda, there was the final ROPS. And so now that we have our final ROPS schedule, we were able to tighten up this budget for the redevelopment fund. And so you see a $10,000 adjustment in revenue and a $3,000 expense for the debt payment adjustment. So those are the changes since you saw the proposed budget. No other changes have been factored into the packet that you saw before and also included in your agenda tonight. And then focusing on the left side of this slide, this is your new multi-year forecast for the general fund. So again, everything is still the same to the left of the 24-25 fiscal year. Everything is the same, but then we are now down to a 32,285 use of general fund reserves to balance the budget. And then moving forward with the fluctuations that every time I look at that multi-year forecast, I'm looking at revenue trends and expenditure trends and truing it up. And this is where we're at this point. We're looking at an ongoing deficit between 596,000 to about 733,000 year over year. And again, that's with status quo, only with some inflationary factors for services and supplies, but there are no salary or staffing changes included in those amounts. This is just a summary of what you'll be doing by setting the general fund reserves tonight. So the estimate as of July 1st, when we start this new fiscal year, is 5.3 million. And then we're going to use those reserves of 32,000 to balance the budget. And then the estimate, truly an estimate, because it's very hard to project where we're going to end the next fiscal year, then we're looking at just under that $5.3 million amount. The way that that is broken down into our various reserves should look very familiar. We have our $3,160,000 in economic uncertainties reserve, our pension unfunded liability of $750,000, which we did use $250,000 this year from that reserve to balance the budget. And you'll see that down at the very bottom in unassigned fund balance. I chose to put the I'll say savings and reserves that we didn't have to use. I chose to put that in unassigned fund balance because it's truly an estimate at this point. I didn't want to put it back into the pension unfunded liability. I wanted to leave it more of a discretionary solution that we could apply to where we needed as time went on. And then we still have our prepaid insurance that we have to report for our self-insurance fund. And then the employee unfunded liability remains intact at $500,000. So as part of the proposed budget, your council asked to return with two things. So one of the items not on the screen here is the committees and commissions work plans. So that is part of your budget packet as an attachment that you have tonight. But then council also requested a status of what's been spent to date on all of the ARPA or American Rescue Plan Act projects and activities. So this slide identifies all of the activities that are either complete, their allocated funds have been spent, and projects that are underway. They show a balance remaining there in that third column. And then there are two that are starting soon. And so those do not have anything spent to date. Those will be your wayfinding associated with the business districts and then the city council chamber technology systems. And there is one almost complete. There's $600 there for the park preserve. So that's the overall status of where all of your ARPA projects stand at this point. So with that, I just wanted to give a nod to where this budget is going to be for the public. So it is available, of course, in your agenda packet. It will be posted on our website at the address shown, and then we will be printing hard copies soon, and they'll be available for viewing at the finance department. So with that, I will turn it over. Well, actually, let me do this next step slide. So we've been talking about this already, but we are of course going to return regularly, and at minimum, we'll be back to the council with some updates. So in August, we're going to have an early fiscal year end 23-24 result, and that'll be best as we know it, how our fiscal year 23-24 revenue versus expenditures are showing. So that'll be a much better, cleaner, updated amount to show where we're at with the deficit in the current year. And then starting in October, that's going to be when we're able to do the first quarterly financial update. So it'll look a lot like the fiscal year end. It'll just be in a new year, and it'll just be for the first quarter. My plan is to come up with some templates so it looks always the same each time it comes forward to you. So that should be something to help inform decision making and keep an eye on the budget moving forward. And with that, I will turn it over to any questions you may have.
Councilwoman Amar?
Thank you very much. I really like the small synopsis here that you gave us. I appreciate it. So a couple of things here, the changes, the proposed changes. I see, so there's an increase in cost, but one time, and that's for the audit and the impact fee study services.
The audit will be ongoing, and then the impact fee, yes, one
Oh,
time.
yes, that's true. It'll be ongoing. That's true. Okay. And, okay, the sewer fund replacement line, I'm just a little unclear. That's $500,000 out of the sewer fund, less 25,000. So we're saving, it'll be 475,000.
Right.
Okay. And the facilities and equipment fund, what I hear you saying, it looks like the impact fee, the revenue is 16, the cost are 8, so there's 8,000 in some odd sense savings.
Yeah, really what it is this is a fund that has a rolling fund balance similar to the general fund. And so I've trued it up to estimate, to project that we're going to get about the same amount of revenue that we got this year. So I trued that up while wanting to maintain that carryover fund balance at zero,
Okay,
just a balance. And so those were the net, the capital cost was the net decrease in expenses that we had to put in the budget in order to achieve that zero fund balance.
oh,
If that makes sense.
sounds appropriate.
Okay.
Okay, and then, looking at your chart, then you describe it below, but, to be clear, this year, because of ARPA money, we are balanced.
Correct.
Or 32,000 less.
Right.
But then we won't have the ARPA next year, so we have to figure it out in the ongoing years. It's projected at over 700,000. But then it decreases a little bit. Why is that? Just not much of a decrease, but.
Sure. So there are fluctuations every year depending on what's going on. The most, I'll say, obvious thing that jumps off the projection is, as you know, we have our COPS grant in our police department. And so next year, not the one we're starting, but the year after that is when that revenue source drops off. And so things like that impact the fluctuations in the multi-year because we're accounting for what we know we're going to lose or expenses we know we're going to have, those types of things.
Okay, but it's still very high,
Yes.
close to 7. Okay, and then I'm a little unclear on the ARPA chart you have here. So I thought, okay, so the spent to date, I understand. And then the balance remaining does that mean that that money is taken away or is that in the budget?
No, it's in the budget. So the allocation on the left-hand side is solid. That's not
Okay.
going to change.
Okay,
That's just those projects are still underway and they're still working at spending
Okay.
those funds.
so the allocation is still there.
Yes.
Thank you. And then just to be clear, for the council chamber, the ARPA, we're spending ARPA money, 65,000, and that's for, is that for the TV?
It's not just, it's for the Auburn TV to be able to broadcast. The equipment that we have is, I don't even know how old, but it's significantly old. Needs to be replaced. There's consistent problems with it where it's kind of like a roll of dice, so there's going to be an issue. So we just want to upgrade that stuff, make sure that we've got everything done and modernized to where we don't have problems being able to broadcast.
Okay.
And share to YouTube.
And that's always been earmarked?
That's a new earmark that we transferred, I think, was that the scanning project?
Well, it says scanning still on there.
Yeah, scanning is less the amount that we've already reduced. The difference in what you're seeing there for the new item, there's always been a balance of unspent ARPA funds as far as we could see in doing a reconciliation of all of the projects being earmarked. And so that's just the balance. It's not a magical number. That's just the amount that was never earmarked as far as we could tell.
I'm sorry, I'm unclear. What amount was not earmarked?
The $65,064.
Oh, okay, but so that's all we had that was not earmarked was 65,000?
Yeah.
Okay. And I guess I think it's important, so.
We don't know how much it's going to be either, right? I don't know if it's going to be 65,000 or 80,000 or 20. We have no idea until we start procuring all the stuff that we need to do and the labor to put it in. But like, for example, the projector that we have projecting up, that's controlled by Amy's computer. That's done through like a microwave kind of a thing.
Mhm.
And if that goes out, I got to crawl up on a ladder and reset that little box on top of the projector.
That was
which
your job description.
it is. It's other duties as needed. And luckily I'm tall enough to where I can reach it without having to step on the very top of the ladder. So I was going to make Mendel do it, but he didn't quite have the reach.
Oh.
Well, and I just, I just am concerned that, we took money away from downtown, we took money away from Old Town, we took money away from a lot of things. And so, anyway, and all the committees too. So, that's the only questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Dunn.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the presentation. I truly appreciate it. And I do have several questions. Really quickly on the ARPA money, I'm looking at the chart and we show 71,176 for High Street Chamber of Commerce and that's complete. I think that there was some confusion and this happened with our previous finance director. We went round and round and round. $150,000 was allocated for the Western States Trail Museum that is going to be housed in 1103 High Street. And this makes it look like they only got 76,000. Really, they had 150,000, just like Carnegie. What happened was we used about 50,000 or something, I'm not sure, Mengel knows, on the roof. And so that came out of that $150,000. And then there was some about $25,000 or $20,000 that was paid, reimbursed back to the Western States Trail Museum for architectural services and things of that nature. So I just want to make sure that we're accurate, that, and because now it looks like that we've spent 15,000 and I'm not sure what we spent the 15,000 on, if that was the HVAC or I'm a little confused. And like I said, I kept going around with our previous finance director about the ARPA money and the Western States Museum. And
Are you saying those two items are together?
yes,
really?
they're
Okay.
together. They really are the same thing. And so, but for accounting purposes, $150,000 was appropriated, just like for Carnegie, to Western States Trail Museum at 1103 High Street. It just so happens that a portion of that was used for the roof, for the whole roof for the whole building, but that was still for Western States Trail Museum. So
Okay.
I can talk to you offline if you'd like, but I think there was, at the end of the day, 150,000. I don't know, exactly the accounting. Again, some of it was for roof. There might have been something else, I think, security, broken windows, the things of that nature, but it really was just we had appropriated that for 1103 High Street, Western States Trail Museum. But it goes for the whole building
Okay.
in some.
Yeah. And
instances.
I can drill down into the expenditure detail and figure out the parts and pieces of those. What I was hearing is that there was a roof project and then there was everything else. And so I tried to keep those separate, but if
I appreciate that because it's just, as we as a council appropriated the $150,000 for 1103 High Street with the museum, just like we did Carnegie. And so, just for accounting purposes and consistency based on the decisions that we made.
Sure.
And I just realized that when I was looking at your presentation, I saw it before, but I thought, well, anyway, happy to talk about with you offline. Just want to make sure we're all right on that. I did also have some questions. So I know that we have CBDG funds that have been defederalized, I guess. And so I talked about this at our last meeting, I think. They were low interest. What I thought about doing is, I know they're defederalized so that we can spend some of them. It's like $100 and something thousand. And I wondered if maybe we could think about maybe a low interest loan for facade improvements. I know we kind of talked about grants, but maybe instead of doing grants for facades, we can do perhaps some low interest, like really low interest loans or something. But that's for another discussion. But what we did talk, the CDBG funds are discussed in the budget, and those defederalized monies, again, I think if we can somehow leverage them, and I hate to just give them all away because they're gone, right? And we still have some that are available for loan, but 80,000. But maybe there's something we can do with that. So that's a great project for economic development. And I hope that we can do something with that going forward, since we had that phenomenal presentation about how facades really matter with regards to sales and things of that nature. So at that point, I know that tonight under consent, we approved the projects that would be funded by SB1, which namely the $325,000 will be spent on road surfacing for MIDU, 2 inches of overlay. But in the budget, we also talk about, and I'm going to tell you the page number. Page 205, the capital outlay projects. We have $250,000 for annual overlay and then annual street surface maintenance, another $250,000. And so I'm not sure, what are those going to be spent on? Is that in addition to the $352,000 for SB1? Because I know that sometimes transportation monies can only be used for certain things. So if we could maybe Menjel or Gretchen, somebody can.
Sure, I'll introduce what I know, and then I'm sure Menjel has the conclusionary facts. But definitely the SB1 projects that you approved tonight are, I don't believe they're in the transportation fund because they're not, the SB1 dollars aren't typically spent there. But these two items that are in the transportation fund, the 250,000 for each, those are really interchangeable. We like to at least show that we're doing not only overlay, but surface treatment. But
I just didn't know, so we have already the overlay that we're going to do for Mighty for $352,000. But now we have another $500,000 that we're going to spend on additional surfacing. And where will that be spent?
So the
We
money,
have to spend it on that, or can we spend it on something else? I know some of the transportation and transit dollars are very clear and have to be spent, but please.
I'm happy to give you as much as I possibly can. So the monies identified earlier in the SB1 funds, those are very specific to SB1. So the project for MIDU might actually cost a little bit more than that. Now, separate from the SB1 funds, there's other gas tax funds, and that's what this $250,000 is broken down into. And in addition to that, it's also some local transportation funds that's broken down.
The LTF.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
So they're all roadway funds that are eligible for roadway work, but they're separate pots, so they're kept in different places. It's a bit confusing when you're looking at it, but the monies that we're talking about from earlier, the SB1, those are specific and have to be identified for a particular project, which we know that's going to go towards MIDU.
So we haven't identified this other $500,000 worth of work. Is that what you're saying?
So staff is currently in the position where we're developing the total project. So some of these monies may go to MIDU as well, but it may also go to additional areas within the city.
Okay. And just for clarification purposes, and again, I know this, I sit on PCTPA, but these transportation fund dollars, you can't take them and use them for something else. I mean, they have to be used. I know that there are restrictions because they're federal and state dollars that they have to be spent on roadway and improvements and things of that nature. So
These are extremely restricted funds. They're roadway related projects only.
okay, thank you. I appreciate that. So we'll then get a list of what we're going to spend that extra on, or that $500,000.
Once the total project is developed, it'll come to council and you'll make the decision if that's the project we will move forward with.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, let's see. Next question I have. This is with regards to on page 223. We have $59,000 allocated for contractual services under human resources. And last year we had an estimated 25,000. I just was wondering, is that for labor negotiations or what is that?
Partly. So about 15,000 is for labor attorney costs that were previously in the city manager's budget. And then there was another $25,000 that was previously in the finance department budget because HR used to be in finance. And so we carved that out and we put it where it belongs. And that's for like our CalOps recruitment platform,
Okay.
EAP and things like that.
Great. Thank you for the clarification. I appreciate that. On page 225, this is police. I just was wondering what emergency sick leave. What is emergency sick leave? So it looks like we spent about 15,000 last year. In 2021, we spent about 3. I just didn't know what that was. What is emergency sick leave?
So I'll start with the $14,000. So that is purely my typing into a spreadsheet. It's not emergency sick leave, it's part-time salaries. So it's a component of salaries. The 14,000 has nothing to do with emergency sick leave. So that was just me keying in the wrong line.
Is it people that are filling in for when there's people that are sick?
No,
Okay.
no.
So
So
the line was mislabeled?
That line was mislabeled for the 14,000
Okay.
because the line right next to it had the 3,000 in it from a couple years prior. And that's actually related to when staff were going through and developing COVID reimbursement. And it was to flag a component of salaries that was eligible for COVID funds to offset those costs. And that's pretty much what I know because I wasn't here about it, but there was
Sure.
3,000 deemed emergency sick leave, which was an eligible reimbursement from COVID.
Okay, yeah, because there was some reimbursements. I remember about that for salaries under ARPA. Okay,
Yeah.
I mean, under federal funding. So,
Yeah.
okay. Also, just to confirm, this again is under police for materials and services. There's a line item for $100,000 for communications. Is that for radio equipment?
Yeah, it's partly for, well, there's a couple of things going on. So if you look a little bit above for contractual services, you'll see there's $200,000, which is a lot less than the prior
Mhm.
fiscal years. There were some items taken from that line item and put into communication where it's actually more appropriate, such as the wave internet costs of $20,000. But then there is also some Placer radio network connection fees and dispatch connection fees
Okay.
embedded in that. So that's about 50,000 of that cost.
Okay, and I just pointed that out because we did go from 22,000 to 100,000. So I was just trying to figure that out. Thank
Sure.
you. On page, let's see here. 227, again, this is for building inspection. It looks like we're going up to 60,000 for contractual services. We were at 25,000 last year.
Yep, that includes the $45,000 final budget adjustment that we talked about earlier for the impact fees.
Okay, thank you. Almost done. So it's not a question, just a statement, but looking at page 249, just as a reminder to my colleagues, under closed landfill fund, we have a 1.395 deficit it's an ending fund balance for our landfill. So that is something that's looming out there as well. And we just it just keeps getting bigger and bigger, that number. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. That concludes my questions, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Sarah Sammons?
I have no questions.
Okay. Councilman Holmes?
Well, I want to express a bit of disappointment in that 1103 High Street and the Carnegie Library are both on the National Register of Historic Places. And the city, to my knowledge, has not applied for any grants to help either of those buildings get up to where they should be. And I know we spent some city funds and there have been volunteers who have been working at the Carnegie to help fix that up. But there's still a lot of things that need to be done at both of those places that I think we could submit grants to the State Office of Historical Preservation and get some funding for those projects. At the Carnegie, well, both places, there's some ADA issues and so forth that we need to get some lifts or elevators or something in both of those places in order to make them fully ADA compliant. So I'm hoping that we can get moving on some grant applications for those historic buildings.
Councilman Holmes, I just wanted to interject here because we've been talking, I'm the liaison to the Western States Trail Museum. And I know that they are looking into a variety of grants. And so what the deal is that they're going to do all the research. They're going to do all the preparation. And then because we just don't have the staff to actually pull those grants together, they're going to then take a final product and then the city will sign off so that we're not having to look up the grants and do all that stuff because we just don't have the manpower. So I know that the Western States Trail Museum, they have several board members that are really very well versed in grants. And so they're working on those now. And I believe that the Carnegie's in the same situation. I've kind of liaison with them as well with their board president. And they have grant writers too. So they're actually out there looking at different grants. And if there's opportunities where there are grants that the city has to apply for, they're going to bring everything to the city. And then we just have to approve it and go so that we're not having to spend staff dollars on it. But they're very much looking into
But the
those.
city has to apply for the grants.
But they'll do all the work. They'll find them, they'll put the grant paperwork together and then come to the city. And then the city will then come to the council for approval and then put them forward. So I know that they are working on some of those grants because it's important. There are some dollars that are available. You're right.
Yeah,
Mhm.
okay.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I know we've been going through this a lot. I've asked a lot of questions in the past. I had a couple quick questions and then I think that's it. Around School Park Preserve, AB 1600 fee fund, it has a positive balance. What exactly, can you explain that fund a little bit more? It's page, oh gosh, mine are double printed. So I
Yeah,
think
it's
Right.
243 maybe?
It's funny. I don't know.
It's $2,000 of expenditure and then it's got 153,000 in positive. He's like, I'm gonna sit down again.
I think it's negative. It's
Or it's negative, sorry.
That's
it's
what I
negative.
thought. I was trying to still
Sorry,
find
not
it, but I thought it was negative.
Yeah.
So yeah, the negative balance is associated with repayment over time. So we're going to be getting those fees are charged to the project area, and then it pays that deficit back over time. But it's going to take a while, I think, correct?
And what's the project that we paid for that cost the over 153,000 that we're paying back over time? Do we know?
It was, and I can speak to this, and Councilman Holmes too. We were around on the council then. We purchased the property for the School Park Preserve and we made all those improvements because it was owned not by the city. Yeah. And so
There it is.
there were some,
We're still paying
we're
back
still paying some of that
the
back.
cost
Mhm.
of buying that parkland.
And making the improvements because we daylighted Auburn Ravine before it was just a culvert that went through. So we received federal monies. We received, grants and so forth, foundation monies, but the city is still paying off some of that. And it was always the intent to get additional mitigation monies. They're so slow in trickling in because it's only around a certain areas. It's going to take us a long time.
Yeah, I'm like at 2,000 a piece, $153,000 is gonna take a while. So I was just curious.
Yeah, the $2,000 is through our development fee program, right? So building permit gets pulled for a new house, commercial, whatever, well, probably not commercial, but new house. They pay a development fee. I don't know what that fee is right now, what it's set to, but that's what that revenue is coming in. So if we get a lot more development, we get more development fees, pay off the negative balance quicker.
I thought part of our issue was that we didn't have development fees. Is that a different kind of development fee?
AB 1600 is a development fee.
I know we were saying when we were talking earlier that we didn't have the development fees that other cities have. So this is a different kind of development fee than the ones that we would like to implement in addition to this.
We should have multiple development fees,
Okay.
but we don't.
Okay.
So this is one that we
This
do
is one
have.
That we actually have,
Right.
but there are others that other cities have that we do not have.
Right. So I'm assuming, I wasn't here when this was created, but I'm assuming that we created the fee to offset the cost of the purchase, right? So new development would go to pay that off.
Okay.
But the majority of the money that we collect in park mitigation monies really goes to ARD we have an agreement with them. And so it's because they are the ones that manage the parks for the city. So almost all go directly to ARD, but we had this little tiny carve out and it's only development that occurs in a specific area, I believe. So that's why it's just so small.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just kind of a
Way
odd,
back in the day.
random
Yeah.
thing that I was just curious. I know
20 years ago.
I knew there was a history, but I wasn't around for it. So I was just curious. I was wondering I didn't see it listed. What's our total staff number? I saw that in the audit that it was at 70 or 97 when they did the audit for 22-23. What are we at now?
Actually, on page,
Is that, did I miss
it's at
it?
the very end with the blurred double counting there, the page numbers. Anyway, it's 89.
89? Matt? Oh, there we go. City-wide position allocation. Okay, that's where I just somehow missed that. Next to the glossary. Okay, so we're at 89 there, 93. We were at 97 at one point?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Oh, these are all in this next year. Okay, so the before, okay, 97 was a 22-23. Okay. So we went up and then we went back down again. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay.
And then just wanted to confirm the street sweepers in this budget. I'm just want to make sure that we can clean our streets. Is that correct?
It's in the sewer budget. Yes.
Great. Because it's just kind of pushing things around, but not really sweeping at this point. So that's great. And then I had a quick question on the PD budget and just really budgets in general. When it comes to fuel for vehicles, are we going to see any impacts to that cost as we switch to electric vehicles? Do we anticipate, or is that remaining about the same?
I'm not privy to what the plan is for the transition, but I would think that transitioning away from fuel would definitely decrease the cost to us.
Okay. Are we seeing that in our current ones that have switched over? It looks like it's increasing still for PD. So I know we don't have very many PDs that are, but in general, what's it looking like with our fuel costs?
So in the funds that are utilizing electric vehicles, i.e. transit and sewer now, we're starting to see a decrease in fuel costs.
Okay.
So there is some cost savings associated with it. However, things like PD that are exclusively still combustion engines, price of gas has gone up. So we're starting to see an increase in those locations,
Okay.
unfortunately.
And there is some opportunity to switch PD over to electric as well in certain circumstances, I would assume.
Correct. So we're building that into the capital improvement program and part of the electric vehicle transition plan.
Okay.
So we'll start to see different things in different areas with PD and fire where we can for command vehicles and things like that. We'll eventually go to electric vehicles.
Okay, great. And then my last question is about the grant for the 4 police officers. So we have the 4 police officers in here for this upcoming year, and then the grant is ending after this coming year?
Right.
And then in this graph that you have, are the 4 police officers still there, or
Yes.
do they drop off?
They're still there.
Okay.
Mhm.
Was that I can't remember if that was the original agreement of when we. No.
No, the
they're
revenue
still
component
they're
drops
still in
off.
here. But I thought that the idea was that we would transition back to the regular, maybe this is Chief Canan's question, sorry. That we would eventually, maybe not instantly, but transition back to the previous amount because we can't really afford those 4 on their own.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council members, Ryan Canan, the Chief of Police. So to answer your question, Madam Mayor, the plan was at the end of the grant period was to find an alternative source.
Oh, find a different grant.
And that either was a different grant or here we are today talking about the city's revenue and our deficit and everything else. So, but the big part of it was trying to find another resource and source to pay for that and to build them into the budget.
Okay. I don't remember that from our conversation, so thank you for the
But
reminder.
they're built into this budget.
But they are built into that budget.
And their grant is currently paying for how much of their cost at this point?
It's approximately a third
A third.
of the cost.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, those were all the questions that I had. Let's see. So we need to adopt the budget. So is there any public comment on this? Okay, seeing none, I will bring this back.
I move we adopt a resolution to approve the 2024-25 final budget of $35,419,084. Set general fund reserves at 5,292,000 or 5,292,518, and the appropriation limit of 24,063,402.
Second.
Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Dowden Calvillo.
Aye.
Amara.
Yes.
Holmes.
Aye.
Sierra Sammons.
Aye.
And Mayor Riddell Harris.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I I know we have one more item on the agenda, but I need a 7-minute break if that's okay, and we can come back at 8:10.
Yes.
Thank you.
Unanimously.
Oh, I had a.
Those Davids. And like little petri dishes.
All right, we're gonna get started up again and we're moving on to our PACE financing program.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, council members. Jonathan Wright, Community and Economic Development Director. So I received a presentation a while back, and it's a program that I had not heard of before. It's one that the city manager has got familiarity with in Loomis. And the more I learned about it, the more interesting it became. It's not necessarily something that'll benefit everybody, but I could see that there's some people out there that it may benefit with certain home improvements that they want to do. And I'm going to let Chris Peterson take over here from Fortify. He's got the whole presentation and we'll give you the rundown on what it is, how it works. We also have Gabe Holbert on the Zoom, and he's from Home Run Financial. So between the two of them, hopefully they'll be able to answer everybody's questions. So Chris. Thank
you, Jonathan. Mayor, members of the council, my name is Chris Peterson. I work for Fortify Financial. I'm also a Placer County resident, city of Roseville. Here today to discuss PACE financing. This is a program that's been around for a while, been through some ups and downs, but as of the last about 5 years, it's really come to become a great program here in California. And so we're going to go through it here. Feel free to jump in if you have any questions. Happy to answer them as we go through this. So PACE is a way to finance energy efficient, renewable energy and wind mitigation improvements for property owners, windows and doors, roofs, HVAC systems, solar. This is not for marble countertops and fancy bathrooms. This is for critical improvements that help with the health and safety of your primary investment being your home. It is repaid as a non-ad valorem tax assessment on your tax bill, and which is paid, you can impound it, pay it with your mortgage the way you would anything else. The reason why that's important is that it allows us to offer a very competitive interest rate regardless of a credit score, because it is secured by the property itself. So again, these types of improvements, like we discussed. So this is a fixed term. It's a fixed interest rate. This doesn't fluctuate. There's no balloon payments. There's no something hiding in the closet for you to have to deal with. Everything is done up front. And again, it's attached to the property, not the property owner's credit. The term does not exceed the useful life of the improvements that we're installing. So if it's windows and doors for 25 years, if it's a roof, it's 20, 25 years. HVAC's usually 15 or 20, depends on the model itself. There is no prepayment penalty. If you want to pay off today, just like you would your mortgage, you don't have to pay the entire interest throughout the life. Whenever you pay it off, you just, whatever your balance is, that's what you pay. So in order for a property owner to qualify, you must be current on your property taxes for 3 years, no more than one late payment. That's a state law. All of these, by the way, are in state law. It must be current on your mortgage, not in active bankruptcy, and no involuntary liens against property, no mechanics liens, et cetera, tax liens. Must have a minimum of 10% equity in the property, and you cannot fund more than 20% of the fair market value of your property. Does anybody have any questions about the qualifications? Okay. So the benefits, why would somebody do this? Being able to finance 100% of your upfront costs without having to have a good credit score, as long as you've demonstrated that you're a responsible property owner, you've made all your mortgage payments on time, made your tax payments on time, et cetera, and you have equity in your property that you haven't over leveraged, then this is an opportunity for you it's an option for property owners that may have had issues with their credit in the past. Maybe they went through divorce. There's 100 million reasons why. We all know that credit does not necessarily mean that you're not a good borrower. It can mean lots of different things. So we do look at the property's equity. We look at the no late payments, et cetera. So the financing terms of 30 years will give you at interest rates between 8% to 10%. And those fluctuate, by the way. When the mortgage rate was at 3 or 4%, we were at 4 or 5%. So we tend to be within a point or two of whatever the mortgages are being done at. The 30 years that will give you a lower payment, which considering that the average assessment is about 7 years on property, because most people will refinance or they're going to sell during that time frame, which at that point it gets paid off out of escrow. that lower payment does help to, you know, to make sure the borrower is able to pay for that. If you go some other companies that are unsecured, you won't see more than a 10 or 15 year. And if it's like a SoFi or something, that's even lower, sometimes a 5-year. So the interest rate again is based on the selected repayment term. If you have a 5-year, you're going to pay a little bit lower. If you're in a 20-year, you're going to pay a little bit higher, but it's all within that range. And this is for both residential and commercial. We work with a lot of small business owners. Maybe you have a strip mall, maybe you have a hotel, maybe you have something that you need an HVAC system for. That can cost you $200,000-$300,000 for that. This is a way for commercial property owners to benefit from this program as well. And of course, you can combine it with other incentive programs. We don't actually work with any other incentive programs. That's up to the borrower to make those determinations. We just certainly don't get in the way. You can really do whatever you like. Trying to go back to the last screen. There we go. So contractor quality assurance. So just to be clear, we don't actually hire contractors. We're not a contracting firm that offers financing. We are a financing company and PACE financing. All three companies that work under the CSCDA are financiers. We work with local contractors that are already doing business in your community. And those same contractors probably have 2 or 3, sometimes more financing options, right? So typically someone will come to your house and say, hey, like for example, Northwest Windows and Exteriors. I actually got a PACE assessment for my house with Northwest Exteriors, wonderful company. They came in, they wanted to ask me, and I didn't tell my work for the company. I want to see how they handled this. And what they did was great. This is what all the contractors that we work with do. You go through, they're going to tell you what you need. You're going to tell them what you can afford, et cetera, et cetera. And then they say, how would you like to pay for this? And you want to pay cash? You want to, use a credit card, heaven forbid. You want to get a HELOC from your home's, home equity, or there's a PACE program. It's a way to finance these, you pay it back on your tax bill. That's basically how it works. There's like, we're not sending people out door to door, door knocking and whatnot. We work with folks that are already working in your community. And that tends to be the best way to do this. Because again, we're just an option for folks. It's not mandatory. There's no government funds involved. There's no output from the city, the county in this program. It's just a way for just another tool in the tool bag for these contractors to use to help homeowners get what they need. So we do a training and registration process. They have to sign a code of conduct. And all this is state law as well. So this is not just mandated by us. This is mandated by the state of California. So we do have watch lists, contractor reviews. So all the companies will have a monthly call where we'll discuss if there's a contractor that's doing something that doesn't make any sense. So typically, if we kick out a contractor for not doing the right things, everybody's going to do the same thing. Does anybody have any questions so far? All right. Yes, ma'am.
I did see on an earlier slide, sorry. I did see on an earlier slide that there's no prepayment penalty with residential.
Correct.
I'm just presuming then that if you're a commercial owner, you would have a penalty.
So commercial deals are structured a little bit differently. And typically there would be some sort of a prepayment. That's pretty standard with commercial deals. Now, on some of the smaller commercial deals, sometimes we'll treat them more like residential. We call it resi-mercial. We're not going to if it's a smaller deal under 250K, we typically would treat it more like a residential. So they'll benefit from those types of consumer protections. Some commercial deals, a lot of times, these CPACE deals can go up to $100 million. I mean, a lot of them averages about 22 million. We do not deal with these types of larger balance stuff. That's stuff that other companies deal with. But you're talking about capital stacks, replacing mezzanine financing. It's a lot, lawyers involved, and typically they don't need the consumer protections that Joe and Sally homeowner are going to need out down on Main Street. Right? They're going to need something a little bit more touch points, more communication, more explanation. Than the lawyers on their end they're on their own, right? They're going to have to figure that out. But so we don't deal with that as much, and probably won't see that as much here.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So why would we do this? This is, obviously having options for your constituents, your property owners, when it comes to replacing things like roofs and windows and doors and HVAC systems, especially in summertime. I mean, it's nice to be able to have different options. Like even if you wanted to get a home equity line of credit, that can take 60, 90 days. And well, that's your whole summer. So we can do it in a lot quicker time, and you can still get your HELOC and pay it off right? If that's what you like to do, but it's just a much better alternative than having to put it on a high interest credit card, which I don't know about y'all, but I've seen my rates of my own credit cards have gone up and I have good credit. So who knows? It's crazy financial world we're living in today. There is no cost or liability to the government with signed indemnifications. No public funds are used. These are private dollars. Again, we need authorization because we work with the CSCDA, who is the government entity that will place these on the tax roll. So this is why we're here today, and to make sure everybody has transparency and understands what's going on. So we are a fully regulated financial institution in the state of California. We are subject to audits. We have accountability through the DFPI. Over the last few years, we've seen a couple of providers leave the market. And so what is left right now is Renew Financial, it's Home Run Financing, and it's Fortify Financial. And I will tell you, after 10 years in this space, we have found a wonderful sweet spot where you've got great providers who are very engaged, very interested in helping to pass these laws that were consumer protection laws that maybe led to some of the other providers leaving. I'm not going to say any more than that, but I'll tell you that the amount of issues that we've seen have gone down significantly, and there is no unresolved complaints at this time in the state of California for PACE, which is a wonderful place to be. We've worked very hard to get there. We've also seen a lots of a reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, and we've created jobs through this program. It has been a good economic spur for lots of contractors who maybe are losing out on some folks that would otherwise be qualified under PACE that aren't being qualified through unsecured, especially in this particular type market, that they're able to get those folks funded, hire more people. So it's been a good economic development tool as well.
Acronym DFPI.
Department of Financial. What is it? The Department of Finance.
Department of Financial Protection and
Innovation. That's the one. I don't know what they're innovating on, but it was like, thank you, Jesus. All right. These are our complaints. I wanted to put this in here so you see that, again, once we got down to just a few providers, we had very few complaints, and certainly unresolved complaints are very low. And at this time, that one complaint has been resolved. I will tell you that 99% of these have to do with contractors. The guy left nails on my driveway and my tire popped. They let the cat out. They left a cigarette on the property. Whatever the case is, a lot of them have to do with that. When it comes to the financing itself, when you look at the consumer protections, I'm not sure where that slide went. So our consumer protections really help to mitigate these issues. And I'll tell you, of all this list, the two most important items here are the confirmation of terms phone call with the property owners. We actually do two calls, one in the beginning before you enter into the agreement that says, do you understand that this is a lien on your property? Do you understand that you're likely going to be asked to pay off this assessment in the case of a sale or refinance transaction? Do you understand that this is your payment? This is your annual payment. And if you impound your mortgage, this is going to be your monthly payment, right? And this is how long your term is. This is what you're financing. We actually send an inspector out to the house, a third-party inspector, to make sure that what you're financing has actually been installed. You bought a 5-ton? Did you get a 3-ton or did you get a 5-ton? Right? That's a real example. And somebody tried to pull the wool over our eyes and give them a 3-ton, even though they paid for a 5-ton. And we were like, get that out of here. And they have to go back and fix it. And then they don't get to use PACE anymore. So the confirmation of terms clause, it helps to reconcile what the contractor says about the program and then to the consumer, because then we turn around and tell the consumer everything that's going on. And we learned very early, contractors will say all sorts of things. They're no longer with the program. They're no longer able to offer PACE financing. The most important item here is the payment to the contractor after installation. So we actually get a signed confirmation of completion certificate from the property owner. Then we send out the inspector. We use what's called TruePick, same concept. And then if everybody's happy, then we pay the contractor. How many times have you heard of contractors running off with half your money and never coming back? They're out of business. They're gambling down at Thunder Valley, whatever the case is, but they're not getting the job done. Well, if they want to use this program, they have to pay. They don't get paid till the work's done, period. And that's been huge for property owners and for good contractors who are doing good business, because they don't have any good contractors don't have a problem with that. So that's basically what we're offering here. So at the end of the day, there is no cost to you. This is an option. It is not required. I think that through all of the consumer protections that are implemented in state law and that are accountable and audited by the DFP. I think you're going to benefit from a learning curve. There has been some issues early on. I think we've solved all of those. I think the data speaks for itself. Those audit reports are available online. I have links that I can provide you, but it's really been a wonderful evolution of the program, and we're happy to offer it, and hopefully the citizens of Auburn can benefit from it. And somebody was asking if there's other programs available. So Placer County used to be part of the Empower, and that, to the best of my knowledge, and I just double checked, it was sunsetted in August of 2021.
Yes,
and
it's
so
no longer, and yes.
that's correct. So we, they do the same thing that we do. We just tend to be a little bit, it seemed to work a little bit better with the way that we're doing it. So, we are active in Placer County. We were just reauthorized. We're active in Roseville and Loomis, I believe. But we are now here for Auburn. So we'd love to be able to offer. Yes, ma'am.
How do you get the word out and advertise and let people know about it?
So that's a good question. So, again, we're not big on advertising. We'll do some directed marketing stuff, but typically we just work with contractors, and we just want to be an option for folks that contractors can offer to their clients. So we're not direct marketing the way that you might imagine. We're not like hand door hangers and all that kind of invasive marketing, as we kind of refer to it. We really work to try to help the contractors understand us, the ones that are already out there doing the work.
Got it. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for your presentation. I work in utility programs, so I've worked with PACE stuff since they came out in 15 years ago or so. So it's been a while.
Yeah.
And it definitely had some consumer issues back in the day. And there were some times when I would tell people not to use PACE, but it's really made a turnaround. And I really appreciate you kind of noting that and not ignoring the fact that it's had some challenges in the past. So I'll ask you a couple of questions that'll just help our staff to better be able to work with you.
Yes, ma'am.
What do you want? I guess, when somebody calls and says, what about this PACE thing? Is there a website that we're supposed to refer them to? Is there something in particular that helps people to start with it? Because there are certain contractors that you work with and certain ones that you don't. So how do they find that list of contractors so they can start that process?
So a couple of different ways to do that. It's a good question. So we're happy to provide our links on that we can put on your website that will direct folks to those different programs. The CSCDA has an explanation. CSCDA is the California statewide, Gabe,
Development Authority.
Thank
So
you, Gabe.
I have, between all the states I work in and the acronyms galore. So they actually have a good write-up on PACE. There is a trade organization called PACE Nation that, that may also be helpful for residents. As far as working with contractors, typically you could ask your contractor if you're already in the process of whether or not they're signed up. If not, it's a straightforward process. It does require 6-hour training, but it's not a bad thing. It's a very good thing. So if they're willing to do that, we wouldn't want you to not work with, let's say your brother-in-law who might be a contractor. We just would ask them to go through the same steps, make sure you're licensed and insured and that you're in good standing with the CSLB. That's a Contractor State Licensing Board. I know that one.
Does it cost anything for a contractor to be part of your program?
It does not cost anything, and no ongoing fees. It is completely free of fees.
Do you have any, we get asked this all the time in utilities. Do you have any frequently asked questions or guidance for customers telling them that they should get 3 bids and things like that?
Absolutely. We actually, I think last time I checked, actually put that on our agreements as well. Like we really encourage folks. I think that's a really important part of the process. We certainly wouldn't want to not have them do that. However,
They don't have
hard,
to.
yeah,
but
it's hard to
good if
make
people
them,
want-
especially like, let's say, I don't need another bid. This is my brother-in-law, right? So we can't really acquire it. And I know there's been a few attempts at that through the legislature, and we've had to have those sit downs and help them understand why that's kind of
No, but
counterintuitive
it's
to.
good if there's information so people who don't know what to do have kind of more step-by-step.
Yeah, and oftentimes that's mentioned on calls as well. So we certainly wouldn't discourage that.
Okay, great. How long does the process normally take?
It can be very quick if you have everything in order. There are ability to pay tests that are required by state law. So, a lot of times that will require some documentation to be collected and submitted and reviewed. So you can get it done within a couple of days typically.
Pretty good.
Yeah, especially if it's an emergency, like, oh, my AC is out and it's 110, like it was, here the last couple of days. So, we would certainly do our best to accommodate, but as long as we're within the within, doing all the right steps, correct?
Is there, maybe this is Jonathan two question. Is there a, opportunity for there to be training for our staff so that way they understand the PACE program? So that way if they get asked like whether they're doing inspections or things, they're out at different residences or commercial places that they would know if somebody brought up PACE just to make sure what it is and those kinds of things? Is there-
Yeah, what I would recommend is that if there are specifics, we can put together like a frequently asked questions that could help to mitigate that. And I would also direct them to myself or Gabe. Gabe seems to know all the right acronyms, so he might be the right one to answer these questions. But I think that in the interest of the kind of indemnification side, I would probably steer them more towards us. We'll give you whatever resources we can to help with those consumer questions. But I think in the end, we're pretty accessible and we're happy to speak with whomever wants to discuss. And not from a sales, but from like a general questions.
Yeah, and I guess my thing is, we're having done this kind of work for a while, you don't need the phone number until you get the random question 6 months or a year from now when you need the phone number, and then you can never find it. So I just trying to make sure we have that documented somewhere so people have access to it.
Sure. And I can happy to work with Jonathan offline to get that, whatever we can to help.
My staff every Friday.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. That's all the questions I have. Do you have any other questions?
I just had a really quick question. So thank you very much. I mean, it is time for Auburn to participate in this program. Do you cover the cost of storage? So I see solar, but do you solar batteries too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, typically I think in this day and age, we know it's kind of strange to do one without the other. So I think it's hard to, I mean, I'm sure somebody will sell you one if you don't want it, but you should have a battery there. So yes, that is something that we do cover.
Yeah, I just saw solar, but I didn't see battery, so that's why I asked. So thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Councilman Holmes?
Yes, in one of your earlier slides, there was something about homesteads.
That may have been a Florida hangover there, that I may have missed. Well, obviously, like the homestead would obviously be like a Texas or a Florida thing. So yeah, we operate in Florida. So my guess is that I may have just missed that one. So thank you for catching it, Mr. Lawrence.
Is there any public comment on this item? All right, seeing none, then I will bring it back to the council.
All right, well, I'll move by resolution to approve the California Statewide Communities Development Authority Open PACE program.
I'll second.
Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Dowden Calvillo.
Aye.
Amara,
Yes.
Holmes,
Aye.
Sierra Sammons.
Aye.
Mayor Del Harris.
Aye. Thank you. Motion carries. Moving on to the city manager's report.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So last week I was invited to a coffee with Supervisor Cindy Gustafson and the city manager. That was a really cool event. It was at Depot Bay last week. Was able to meet with several of our residents and folks from our business community. I met one of the owners of 2S Brewery. So we were just talking about some of the challenges that they had. It was really honored to be part of that event. Planning staff and I met this morning with the United Auburn Indian Communities Tribal Heritage Team. That was a really neat, really good meeting to introduce ourselves to the tribe and reinforce our commitment to working with them to protect their historic and current cultural resources. We haven't had a whole lot of projects that we've needed to do consultation with the tribe on, but working cooperatively with them is certainly important to all of us. So that was a good one to meet today. On Tuesday last week, one of our engines responded to the Arrow Fire in Calaveras County as part of a Placer County strike team with engines from Auburn, Roseville, South Placer, Forest Hill, and Lincoln. And after spending one 24-hour shift on the fire and then one 24-hour rest day, they were transferred to the Sites Fire in Colusa County, where they spent 2 shifts on the fire line. And then they were released from the incident and returned here to Auburn yesterday, safe and sound, according to Tony D'Ambrosio, our battalion chief. So on that engine crew was Captain Matt Bowers, Engineer Dalton Hooten, and firefighter Cole Davis. So nice to see them out and helping with the fires. Let's see, what else we got? Big one kind of that we've been working on for quite a while here. Staff had a really successful meeting with Placer County Environmental Health regarding the underground storage tanks on High Street. That was last week. So they anticipate having more information soon for us. And then they expect to present a recommendation. We expect to present a recommendation to the council shortly thereafter. So that should be coming back to council for a plan on how to address that. We know that there's been kind of some serious challenges for the businesses that are right next to that underground storage tank that we've been dealing with. And so we want to make sure to get that moved forward, cleaned up, and not impact those businesses any more than we have to. So I'm continuing to work towards that. I got other stuff, but in the interest of time, I'll cede my time back. If I can answer questions that you have, though.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the city manager?
I was just going to mention, the weekly reports that we get, I can't access them on my phone anymore. So I don't they're in a format that I'm not able to, I might be able to do it on my computer, but yeah, it's weird. I
Good.
can't pull it up on my phone. I don't know if
They should be PDFs, so you should be. I can.
I had that for a while that I couldn't click on it and have it open, and then last week it just opened randomly.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it is, but
Huh.
I don't know. It would be easier if they were just embedded versus having a.
Okay, I'll see what we can figure out.
Yeah, I keep forgetting to mention it, but you mentioned the report and I love to read it. It's so well written and it's great information, but I haven't been able to access it for the past several times.
I had that too. I had to go on a separate computer.
Yeah, yeah.
okay.
I'm not sure what changed, but it's.
I don't
great.
either, but we'll figure it out
Thank you.
for this week. Yeah.
Is there anything else? Do we want to have council reports? Is there anything of note that anyone wants to share? All right, then unless there's objection, then.
Actually,
Oh,
Madam Mayor,
yes.
forgive me. I do have a
Take a time.
just a point of personal privilege. I just want to thank our members of the public that stuck with us, in particular, very young lady over in the back named Natalie. Natalie is here to earn her communications badge for Scouts. And in order to do that, she needs to attend a meeting. I think you earned that badge, young lady. Thank you.
Tell you 30. Thank you. I know.
She picked a long meeting. So yeah, double badge.
All right, with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.